I don't know if we need the last Gentry cut,
Rockets beat the Heat.
but maybe those first four.
The carryover effect?
Yeah, that
The
carryover
Suns
effect.
109
With the first four.
T-Wolves got 40 from Andrew
I thought we'd
Wiggins,
go
30
do
from
like
Jeff Teague to beat the Clippers,
kind of an
126,
intro here,
College
get through the
hoops,
first
7th
15
ranked
minutes
West
talking about the
Virginia
game,
lost to TCU,
and then take a break or whatever, the first break, and then we come back and do the
10th ranked North
audio.
Carolina beaten
Okay.
And then we'll go to the
69
guests.
Hokies. I'm Deb Carson.
If that works.
Was way behind on.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
I don't know if you had enough time to put it all together or not.
$15,000.
Yeah, no, man, I've already got it in and ready to roll.
Okay.
So whenever you call for it, I got it.
All right, we'll do it in the second segment.
Force. They're coming to put a lien and a hold on all my income, my home, my car. I was just overwhelmed at what to do.
Then Eric called Optima Tax Relief.
When Optima Tax got involved, the calls would stop, the threats would stop. It was easy like 1, 2, 3.
Optima Tax Relief is A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau, and their team of expert tax professionals took care of Eric's problem.
I owe $15,000, and now my debt is clean. I don't owe anything.
The Minnesota
Take Eric's
Super Bowl
advice.
If you have a tax problem,
host committee
you need to
has
call
got all
Optima
these
Tax now.
Call Optima
things
Tax
set up
Relief
for the
for a
media.
free consultation.
You know,
Call
during Super Bowl week.
800-798-2477.
One of them, they take you on an ice fishing trip,
800-798-2477.
which I'd like to do, but I'm not going to be there in time. Then the killer is they have a tour of Paisley Park Studios.
Really?
That's like the day before I get there,
Wow.
which would be cool.
Hey pros, did you know that when you buy in bulk at Lowe's, you can
Yeah.
save big?
That's
Like when you buy contractor quantities
absolutely
of Hardy
would
Backer
wanna do
cement
that
boards, you can save up
one
to
time,
10%.
'cause I think they're gonna turn this
and
estate
that's an
into like a-
everyday savings too.
like
it's
an
just
actual
one of
still
the many
functional
services
studio
Lowe's
and
offers
like a
pros to help put
like
more
touring
money
his
toward
house,
their bottom
like
line.
leaving it as is,
Plus,
showing all his
you can
stuff.
Really?
save time
Oh, yeah.
by ordering ahead on
Yeah, it'd be sweet to go see that.
LowesForPros.com and pick up your order at our Pro Desk. Learn more about what we can offer your business by stopping
Like
in
the
and
ice fish
talking to
too,
one of our
Oh, you-
pro services
Is it
specialists
just you going,
today.
or
Katzenstein's
This is
going.
fun. I didn't think I liked kayaking.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed
are you
it.
doing the show from
It's
there?
time to head back in.
I'll just call in. Larry will be here.
Can we come back?
Sure. Hey, be careful getting out of the boat.
It's a kayak, Dad.
I'm gonna return the kayak.
Can we walk home?
How about a
Taxi! It's a short fare from your neighborhood to your naturehood. Visit discovertheforest.org
I think
to find
Higgins
a
was at the
neighborhood
game
park
last
He
night.
was.
space
He
near
posted.
you.
He posted a comment about
Council
it
of
today.
US
Yeah,
Forest
I
Service.
figured he would.
Reports of
I
teenagers
heard him asking questions.
All right, 2 minutes.
pods as part of a challenge created an opportunity for North Carolina bakery. Lisa Carter has more.
Wake and Bake Donuts in Carolina Beach, North Carolina has created a donut that
played
looks like a
52
Tide
minutes.
detergent pod. Even has the blue and orange swirls.
Yeah, 52
There's no
minutes
Tide in
total,
the donut,
yeah.
so you can eat
what
as
I
many
wrote.
as
They
you
kept
like.
saying
The
51
donut shop
last
said on
night
its
in the
Facebook
interviews,
page
and I thought I was
decided
wrong.
to take a moment to teach
And then
kids the
I
difference
looked at it
between
again,
what
I was
to
like,
eat
it
and
says 52.
not
I
to
don't
eat.
know.
Doctors say eating a Tide
Maybe-
pod can
maybe
lead
on the
to
actual
life-threatening
score sheet
breathing
it's
problems,
51 and
damage to the
change or something.
esophagus
Yeah,
due to
maybe.
corrosive
rounded
ingredients,
up.
burns,
Yeah, on the
and stomach problems.
on the actual
Lisa
sheet, he
Carter,
played
NBC News Radio.
51 minutes,
Despite a
31
booming
seconds.
economy,
So that's why
Americans
it
are
rounds up.
reporting that they place little trust in U.S. institutions. A Chicago-based public relations
good
firm
call.
reported that less than 50% of Americans have faith in government institutions. The Edelman Trust Barometer survey reports trust fell despite thriving markets and near record low employment rates. CEO Richard Edelman is calling it, quote, an unprecedented crisis of trust and believes it's the first time a major drop hasn't been linked to an economic crisis. Apple is teaming up with activist Malala Yousafzai to support girls' education in Latin America and the Middle East. In a press release, the tech company announced it would support the Malala Fund with money and technology. Apple CEO Tim Cook will also join the fund's leadership council. He called the Pakistani
30 seconds.
shot by the Taliban for speaking out against the ban on girls' education, quote, one of the most inspiring figures of our time. He said Apple is honored to help extend the important work she's doing to empower girls around the world. The Malala Fund will use Apple's support to expand its programs in India, Latin America, and the Middle East with the goal of extending secondary education opportunities to more than 100,000 girls. Consumer and Business
All right, here we go.
Dragadu, NBC News Radio.
Duncan Holder, back at you on a Tuesday, January 23rd, 3 weeks officially from Fat Tuesday. And we're going to have a little bit of a carnival of our own here today in the studio at One Canal Place in downtown New Orleans. Jim Derry, once again, admirably pinch hitting for our cohort, Larry Holder, who is bedridden with the flu, and the great Clyde Verdun also sitting in. The same crew we had yesterday, the three amigos.
Good morning, everyone.
Yep. The only difference between Larry Holder and myself is I have hair, and I have about 70 more pounds on myself than he does.
But slowly dwindling that away.
No difference.
We are going to talk Pelicans today, and what else would you talk about less than 12 hours after one of the most remarkable nights probably in New Orleans Pelicans history for a lot of reasons. DeMarcus Cousins with a monster night, 44 points, 24 rebounds, 10 assists. The first NBA player to put up that stat line since Wilt Chamberlain in 1968.
Pretty good company.
Yeah, that's remarkable.
The 10th time that's happened in NBA history. Kareem has 6 of those.
Yeah, and I think...
You mean Lou Alcindor?
Yes, Lou Alcindor / Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
It was a remarkable night, not only for Cousins' dramatics and heroics, but also for the rally that the Pelicans mustered. I thought they were dead in the water. I'll be honest with you. They were down 17 points with less than 5 minutes left. And all of a sudden, Ron Higgins was interviewing Anthony Davis last night, and I thought he used the exact right term. He said, what caused you all to flip the switch? And it just seemed like a switch got flipped, and all of a sudden the Pelicans were playing unbelievable defense. They gave up, I think, 2 baskets in the last 5 minutes of the game. They almost lost when Drew Holiday's brother, Justin, had a chance to seal the game and missed the final of 3 free throws.
Yeah.
Man, they were fortunate there. But nevertheless, a remarkable night
and it almost went in.
Center.
It almost went in. It kind of hit the back left corner of the rim and just kind of grazed off. That would have changing a fate.
Well, I think after watching that game, I don't know how you could not have been enthused by the effort and by the intensity that the Pelicans displayed. So I thought today would be a kind of a theme show, and we would talk Pelicans. I know we've been talking all Saints all the time, and rightly so with that remarkable playoff run they had. But last night's performance, not only by Cousins but also the Pelicans, I'm just curious, are you on the bandwagon? Did that kind of, if you were on the fence, did it get you off the fence? Are you interested in this team? Are you encouraged by the direction of the program? We talked a little bit yesterday. We had some callers saying that they were not involved. They're not on board, that they want to see change. I'm curious, did that change your mind? So we want to hear your thoughts. We've got a great lineup. Will Guillory, our own Pelicans beat writer, who was there last night, he'll be on at 10:30. 10:45, we've got Brett Martell from the Associated Press, who was also in the house last night. And then at the top of the second hour, we've got Fletcher Mackel, the sports director at WDSU-TV, who always has a strong opinion about the Pelicans. And then we're also going to hear from DeMarcus Cousins, Alvin Gentry, and Anthony Davis about last night's game and what they had to say in the locker room afterwards, because this was a historic performance, and I'm not sure we're ever going to see anything quite like that again. And I think Anthony Davis made a great point that it wasn't just a big night in the box score. It was a big night because they came back and won. And I think it was the way DeMarcus Cousins put the team on his back with Anthony Davis fouled out. It was only the second time Anthony Davis has fouled out of a game in his career. So it was. I didn't think they could do that. They proved something to me last night. I didn't think they could win a game like that, and I didn't think they would ever muster up the energy to play defense the way they did last night. And it just makes you wonder, where's that at all the time? I'm sure it makes Alvin Gentry wonder that, and I'm sure it makes the fans wonder that.
However, you have to look at what happened for them to get there. They had the lead, and again, they had an awful third quarter. And I don't know what it is about the third quarter with this team, but they have just been horrendous in the third quarter, and they have got to figure a way to get out of the locker room and play ball and not wait until the fourth quarter, because they played well in the fourth quarter for the most part, but they can't get things going in the third quarter. And you can't go from having a lead to down 17 and then have to dig yourselves out of a hole, because you're not going to be able to do that against the upper echelon teams, and you're especially not going to be able to do it now as the calendar starts moving forward We all know that this is the time when, as the All-Star game approaches, that you got to stop doing those sorts of things.
And that's in turn where I think we have to put this win in context. Like, we have to look at, first of all, there's two things that I personally want to say today. Number one,
here we go.
Looking at this game in the totality of the season, at the end of the day, that was fantastic entertainment. It was an unbelievable game to watch. The Bulls, even for their record, even for their sub 500 record, that is a quality team. Obviously, they're missing Chris Dunn, who's going to be out for an extended period, but clearly that's a team that hasn't put it together yet. But Lauri Markkanen, that kid's very good. He put up a fantastic effort last night with 22 points.
But I thought it was clearly, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're right.
I agree with you. I was impressed with the Bulls. I was like, this team's got a future. But in crunch time, when the Pels started coming back, they didn't know what to do. They didn't know who to go to, and they settled for a bunch of jumpers.
Right.
They did not understand, take the ball to the basket, get the foul, get something easy, and quell the tide. They had no go-to guy. They didn't know what to do, and it contributed to that comeback.
Right, and that's where I think we have to put this game into context, that it took an extraneous effort to get them back to the point where they needed to be to get themselves back in the game, because you're right. Really, the number, people are going to say, in the stories, that an 18-point lead was the largest lead for the Bulls in the game and in the quarter. It was really towards the end of the game with 5 minutes left, 17. They had to come back from 17 points and find a way to get 17 points in 5 minutes. This team, on paper alone, is going to be entertaining to watch, is going to be fun to watch. They still don't know how to put it together yet, and we'll talk about this later in the show. I'm sure we'll be able to do it, Will and everybody else. But for me, Drew Holiday played a fantastic game that didn't show up on the stat sheet. Number one, specifically for guarding his brother in crunch time, for getting him to dribble the ball off his foot, and then helping procure steals late in the game defensively to help even give the Pels a shot to get back in the game.
I agree 100%. I thought the reason they won that game was the defense they played. Even Cousins making a steal near midcourt, getting a foul called. I mean, that was a huge play. That was an effort play. And look, so we want you to join in the program. We want to hear your thoughts. Were you encouraged, or was it just 1 out of 82 and you've been there before? The number to call if you want to be involved in the program, 504-260-1280. We'd love to get your thoughts. We're going to hear from, like I said, all the interested parties last night, Gentry, Davis, Cousins, and we're also going to hear from some of our local top reporters who were at the game last night, but also who have been covering this team for a while now, and who I think have a great big picture perspective on what's going on with the Pelicans.
Here's what has to change, and we've talked about it before. You expect your stars to have the majority of the shots, or close to the majority of the shots, but Anthony Davis and DeMarcus Cousins made 27 of the Pelicans' 47 field goals.
Yeah.
You can't have
they combined for 78
You cannot have two players making more than half of your field goals. They've got to. We've been repeating this over and over and over again, and I would think that Alvin Gentry realizes this, but how do you change it? I don't know. But when AD is going to miss at least 3 or 4 more games somewhere along the way, and there's, let's see, 25 and 21. There are 30 some odd games left. He's going to miss at least 10% of those. Got to figure out a way to start. You're not going to have another Rondo 21 assist game or 29 assist game or whatever that was. So let's get the ball spread around. Let's figure it out. And I agree. I think Drew is playing his best ball of the season right now. I didn't get to see very much of last night, but I have seen a lot of the last month, and he has certainly become a catalyst and a key. So,
I think last night was a little bit of an anomaly in that they just decided we're going through Cousins every time down. They can't handle him. And the one thing I liked about Cousins, well, there was many things I liked about him last night, but he knew when to go down on the block. He knew when to go to the offensive glass. He knew when to take the three when they were giving it to him. He just managed the game and played smart for, the rare occasion where I said he had 4 turnovers in the first half. He only had 1 in the second half and both overtimes. It was remarkable how well he played. It was by far the best I've ever seen him play. And by that, I mean he was smart with the ball. He made the right pass. He went to the glass at the right time. He took the three when they were giving it to him instead of just launching it up without any flow of the offense. Everything he did was right last night, and they needed it because they had no margin for error. I mean, if Chicago would have gotten one other basket in that run at the end, it would have been over. They wouldn't have had the chance to get back into that game. So kudos to Cousins. I've been a critic of his, but last night he was simply remarkable, and you see why Dell Demps traded for him.
Well, and as a comparison to go with, and I agree with what you said, Dunc, for sure. But in comparison, the Rockets win 99-90 last night. Their top two field goal getters, no surprise, Harden and CP3. They get 16 of 36 field goals. So that goes to show with the difference in percentage. And this is not it's not like I'm an anomaly. It's not like I'm pulling something out of the air here. This is kind of like what it is every night.
And that's the thing that I think a lot of fans aren't understanding fully about the NBA in its current iteration right now. Really, if you're honestly looking at it and you look at the best teams in the NBA right now, really you're playing 2-on-2. I have two of the best. If you are Houston, Golden State, San Antonio, Minnesota, almost Cleveland, but Boston and whoever, you're playing a 2-on-2 game. If you've got two stars, if you've got two certifiable all-star stars, you're basically saying, I've got these two guys who I know are going to get it done. If you just give me even decent, adequate pieces to put around the rest of these two guys, I guarantee you we're going to be a success. In Golden State, you have Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, and then outside of that, you've got Kevin Durant, you've got Draymond Green, you've got Swaggy P coming off the bench. That's what you need to have, and that's where I think we see such a stark contrast between the upper echelon teams in the NBA, identifying those two stars, and then the rest of the league. But the rest of those teams have an more than adequate bench and role players who bring it every night. And if you look at the stats from last night, clearly the Pelicans have gone to a 9-man roster. And when you have Rajon Rondo, who scores 5 points, Ian Clark with 2, Jameer Nelson with 9, and Dante Cunningham with 1, that's literally the difference between a game that probably doesn't go into overtime and a game that you probably win handily if you even have one or two of those guys produce just a little bit more than what they did last night.
But can you win a title playing that way? That's the question I have. I don't know if you can win a championship, and I agree 100% with what you said, Clyde. Here's my point. I looked up last night because I was curious because Cousins had 4 turnovers at halftime, and he's on pace to have one of the highest turnover seasons in the history of the NBA. You know who has the most turnovers in the history of the NBA? James Harden last season, 464. Number 2 in the history of the NBA, Russell Westbrook last season. This is the way the NBA is going. They're putting the ball in the hands of the best player, at least certain teams, and basically saying win the game or lose the game. That's why these guys have these high turnover numbers, in addition to high volume points, high volume assists. So, of course, they're going to have huge numbers. They're going to have a lot of turnovers. Same with Cousins. I just don't know if that'll beat a great team like the Golden State Warriors. But I think what else do you do?
What else can you do
I don't know what else you do, so I understand some of the strategy. Let's take a break, and when we come back, we'll hear from DeMarcus Cousins himself, Anthony Davis, and Alvin Gentry on their thoughts of that epic performance last night, and we'll also get to our guest a little bit later in the hour. You're listening to Sports 1280, NOLA.com, the iHeartRadio app. We are Duncan Holder.
I think we got a new nickname for Clyde. Swaggy C.
Swaggy C.
I like Clyde.
Swaggy.
Clyde the Snide.
Clyde. That's better.
Standard
Snide Clyde.
Supply. That's money to 200-200. New Year's resolutions. Losing weight? Forget that. How about being a better person? Nah, I'm not going to quit smoking either. All right, well, then what about winning Pelicans tickets? Now we're talking. Keep listening for your chance to win Pelicans.
Yeah, whoever that guy was that won our tickets yesterday, he got a great game to go to.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, really.
One game he goes to probably to see the epic performance.
Sarcastic?
Austin's Seafood and Steakhouse. From fresh Louisiana seafood to mouth-watering fresh-cut prime steaks and delectable Italian dishes. Austin's offers an extensive wine list and a fully stocked bar located at
You ever been there?
5101
Austin's?
Esplanade. Casual
What a
upscale
that's
dining
a
love that place.
fantastic
Serving
restaurant.
dinner
I love
Monday
the
through
piano
Saturday
player
for
in
$5.
there.
Yeah,
Have your
it's
next
a really
event with
cool
all
Sit at the
place.
bar and you watch a
Lunches
game.
or
Food
I
is
like the place.
fantastic.
I like everything
Been there
about
a
it.
while.
888-5533.
Yeah, Eric always gives out like those gift certificates when you go on his show to Austin's or Mr. Ed's. I guess it's all the same
Yeah,
owners.
yeah, yeah.
Running low on the stuff
And I always
you
go
need.
to.
It
I
is.
save up
For
for
Target
Austin's.
runs.
Just save
We're
them
here
all.
for
Yeah,
all the big
yeah.
I'd
moments.
rather go
And the
there and
little
get like a
ones, too,
steak.
like flashing your
Save like
pearly
4
whites
of them,
with
have
buy one, get one,
$100.
25% off oral care.
Great.
Time for a selfie. We're stocking
Great
up on
gesture in
Pixie
his
Ups.
part, just
Get
to
a
give
free
you
$5
something,
gift card when you spend $15 on all yogurt,
no
like
doubt.
Chobani and Dannon. And soak up some vitamin C with navel oranges on sale $4.99 for an 8-pound bag. Get low prices on thousands of items today and every day. Target run and done. Pricing may vary. Restrictions may apply.
I'm Johnny Weir.
And I'm Tara Lipinski. Entenmann's is celebrating their 120th birthday. Who doesn't love Entenmann's? Some of my favorite Entenmann's products are their rich frosted donuts, their crumb cake, and of
I
course,
looked up
Entenmann's
Marlon
Little
Beal's
Bites
stats last night. They weren't as good as I
Celebrating
thought.
their 120th birthday.
Only
in a
averaged like
big way
12 and a
with
half
their
points a
I
game.
Sing on the cake
Yeah.
sweepstakes.
He has these
Go to
like
Entenmann's
big nights, and then he has like a
120birthday.com
bunch of them where he'll
to
just
enter
get
for a
like
chance to win
6
some really
points.
great
Or,
prizes.
Sing happy birthday
I don't
to
know.
Entenmann's.
I gotta do
Using
something.
I haven't
on
seen him play over at Southeast, and I'm going to try to go to that game on the 28th.
Yeah, I'll do something that week.
That'll be
1
fun.
minute.
We love you, Entenmann's.
All right, bud.
Hi, it's Jamie, Progressive's #1, #2 employee.
I'll do something that
Leave
week,
a
but
message
yeah.
at the... Hi, Jamie. It's you, Jamie. Don't hang
They
up.
got a pretty good
You
team,
need to hear
actually.
this.
They're right near the
Yeah,
top.
Guy
Right.
was wearing
the
an
Southland's
aviator
good.
jacket.
The
Nobody's
team currently
buying
leading
it.
the Southland,
Sorry
6
you
and
have to
1.
hear it from me,
The Nichols
but at
Cardinals.
Progressive,
Oh,
we're all
boy.
about giving people
But no,
straight.
Southeast.
Still waiting on
So
the
we
pennant,
show
by the
our
way.
Yeah, I
race
know.
alongside
I
our
know. I started
customers.
getting to
If you brought it up, you knew I was going to bring it up.
I know.
You don't need
Um,
some jacket.
I was going back and
it's-
forth 4K
Just
last
keep
night on
rocking that
Facebook.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company.
He's a friend.
All states or situations.
In
Prices
fact,
vary based on how you buy.
if we were
Howdy,
ever
folks.
looking for
I'm Colonel
a
Sanders.
color analyst,
When I
I might
told
call.
folks
Oh,
my
did you see
signature
last night at the
KFC
game?
pot
Tim
pie
Floyd was at the
filled
game.
with
He
Tim
retired.
Floyd, yeah.
fried chicken,
Floyd.
fried cheese, and topped in a golden
I heard he was going to
flaky crust
retire, and he
only
did.
cost $3.99.
He retired in
They said I was
November.
Yeah, he was there with
was
Archie and all.
talking
Yeah.
about it
That was
yesterday.
1980.
And you know, I'd
$3.99
heard
was a
he
lot
was
of
going
money
to do
back
that.
But today,
He said
getting a
he
meal
told
outside
Henderson-
for
Moving back to New
$3.99
Orleans?
He told
is a
Henderson
really
he was
great
going to
deal.
retire
So stop
right
into a
before the
KFC
season,
and
so
get
they had
yourself
to
a
give
pot
the
pie.
job
Finger
to his
licking good.
lead assistant.
Really?
Did it
Participating
on purpose.
KFCs for a limited time. Prices may vary. Tax extra.
This is Dunc and Holder on Sports 1280, New Orleans.
Welcome back, Jeff Duncan alongside Jim Derry and Clyde Verdun. We're talking Pelicans, state of the New Orleans Pelicans. We're now over halfway through the 2017 and 18 season. The Pelicans are right in the mix in the Western Conference. What are they, Clyde? Are they 6th seed right now, or?
Yeah, from what I heard last night, now the Pelicans are basically the 6th seed right now in a tie with Portland.
Clyde, what's their high water mark? They're 4 games over 500 right now.
Yeah, they're 4 games over 500. This is actually the first time that the Pelicans have ever been this far over 500 in Alvin Gentry's tenure with the Pelicans.
And that says a lot. And
That says a whole lot.
So I'm curious, the theme of the show today, are you on board? Are you encouraged? Did last night's game maybe get you off the fence? But before we get into all that and talk to some of our guests and get your calls, let's hear from the Pelicans themselves. Last night, 132-128 double overtime win. DeMarcus Cousins, again, goes for 44 points, 24 rebounds, 10 assists, and I think just as important, 51 minutes. That's a lot of minutes for anybody in an NBA game, an epic night for him. Let's hear from DeMarcus Cousins on his big night.
I think it started with Drew. I mean, the way the defense, the pressure he put on the ball, it was, I think the energy just spread throughout the team. And, it was all effort and defense down the stretch to get to the remainder of the game. So, I credit Drew Holiday just for, igniting the team.
And what was it like for you in that last overtime? You were kind of just commenting, it looked like you just had nothing left.
Man, I didn't care who made the shot. I just wanted somebody to make a shot. It was fun. I mean, you dream about moments like that as a kid, and game coming down to the line and just making big plays down the stretch. And, it was a good competitive game. I think we just willed our way through this game.
You shared something about this team to be able to pull through. I mean, 18 points. Most guys would have left you for dead.
Right. Team got a lot of fight. I'm pissed that we even put ourselves in that position. But a win is a win. And, we knew coming in that this was a tough team to beat, regardless of their record. they're young, they're energetic, and they never stop playing hard. So those are the teams that you're scared of in this league. So credit to them for putting up a fight the entire night, and I'm just glad we got the win.
When you look at the stat sheet, what your emotions are, points, rebounds, assists, and
minutes. The minutes. My strength coach had the nerve to ask me, do I want to lift after this game? I almost lost it. If I had some energy, we would have lost. But no, it was definitely a high amount of minutes. So I'm gonna get this cold tub, try to get my body charged up to get ready for this quick road trip.
To get a bear hug.
There you go.
And Anthony Davis was asked. Anthony Davis, of course, fouled out. We talked about that toward the end of the fourth quarter, so he wasn't even available for the team in either of the overtimes. And he became the biggest cheerleader on the team. He was totally engaged on the bench, leading kind of the intensity from the crowd. He was getting the crowd involved. So Anthony Davis was asked about the comeback and what the atmosphere was like in the Smoothie King Center.
Yeah, a lot of energy from the crowd, the bench. Every time we scored, we did look, and I was just thinking, man, cut it to 10 with like 4 minutes. Got to stop, score it again. Got to stop, score it again. Next thing you know, I'm at the free throw line, trying to win the game. Made 2, we go up 2. We had a chance to win over in regulation, but it was a crazy atmosphere. To have the poise and composure to come back like that, down 18. Just a team who was rolling, get some stops. It was big for our confidence.
And Alvin Gentry, the head coach of the Pelicans, was asked about the big win and about the big comeback and his thoughts.
It was a great win and great comeback. Sometime, I wish we would start the third quarter like we played the last 8 minutes. We just got to find a way to get past that. But other than that, I thought we were great. Obviously DeMarcus had a stat line for the ages. Last person to do that was Will Chamberlain in 50 years ago. So that should tell you about that. But I thought everybody defensively just picked it up. We did a great job, especially those last 8 minutes. And then I thought we did a good job in the overtimes.
And Gentry was asked finally on his thoughts on DeMarcus Cousins' performance and where that ranked in the performances he's seen in his coaching career.
I don't know. I just think it's one of the best performances I've seen ever in this league, really. When you think about the fact that he's got 44 points, 24 rebounds, 10 assists, plays 51 minutes. He's out there guarding basically 3 minutes, some of the time. I thought he did a great job on it, and I won't take him out at the end of the game anymore. I think for one play, I think he can move his feet and guard just about anybody.
So that's some pretty remarkable reaction, I think, kind of subdued. And the thing that impressed me the most about what I heard from the players and head coach Alvin Gentry were they weren't overselling it. They weren't going over the top. Matter of fact, Alvin Gentry said, hey, this was just one game. There's not going to be a carryover. If we go out to Charlotte and lose, it doesn't mean anything. And I think that's the exact right approach. You can't let your foot off of the accelerator in an 82-game season.
What I found interesting last night is it's hard to humble Boogie. And you could tell when at some point before he was interviewed at the end of the game, someone obviously told him what his performance meant in the history of the annals of the NBA.
Yeah, Jennifer Hale did after the game was over
and
in the post-game interview.
He was taken aback by it. And I thought that was a pretty cool moment, actually. And I think that probably after a game like that, they're just exhausted, first of all. You play a 2 OT game when you have to fight and claw back from that kind of deficit. You kind of get a lucky bounce to get it in the overtime. Then you got to play another overtime. So I think it was kind of a mix between exhaustion and amazement at what Boogie was able to do.
And relief, probably.
And relief, yeah, for sure.
Probably glad it didn't go triple overtime.
Yeah,
if they would have had anything left in the tank.
Would they have any legs left in that triple OT?
No, I don't think so. All right, let's wrap this up. Let's take a break, and then when we come back, we'll hear from Will Guillory, who was at the game last night in the arena. We'll hear from him on what the atmosphere was like and what it was like in the locker room talking to the players afterwards. You're listening to Sports 1280, NOLA.com, iHeartRadio app. We are Dunc and Holder.
And Rhymes Connect got the right to vote, and we'll elect, and other rappers can't stand us, but give us respect.
Your forecast on Sports 1280, New Orleans.
You guys feel free to chime in on Will.
This report is brought to you by Boomtown
What up,
Casino.
Will?
Happy
You better
Tuesday
get
from
it
the
ready,
Fox 8
Dave.
Weather
Wobble,
Center.
wobble,
I'm
Will.
meteorologist Shelby Latino. A cooler and sunnier day on
Well,
tap
normally we'd
today
have him
with
on
temperatures
tomorrow, but
climbing into the upper
I'm gonna
50s
do a
for
recruiting
highs.
thing tomorrow,
We'll
so
keep
it just
clear
makes sense
skies through
after the big
tonight.
game to get him on
Temperatures
today.
falling into the mid-30s north of the lake and low 40s south of the lake, with highs getting into the mid to upper 50s once again tomorrow. From the Fox 8 Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Shelby Latino. Have a great day.
This is a Crime Stoppers Most Wanted Alert.
Crime Stoppers is asking you to speak up if you can help locate the person responsible for the January 2nd murder of Myesha McDaniels, who was shot in her car at approximately 9 p.m. in the 3700 block of Cleo Street. Anyone with information on Myesha McDaniels,
All right, we got Will.
to speak
All right,
up
bud.
and call Crime Stoppers at 822-1111 or download our free Tip Submit app. You remain
That was
anonymous
like a
and can earn
school
a
shooting in
$2,500
Kentucky.
cash
Yeah.
reward.
Yeah.
Take a
One
stand.
dead,
Speak
several
up with Crime Stoppers.
For game-changing innovation, look to the
Probably a
Latrim
Kentucky
family
fan.
of companies located in
Oh,
Harahan.
boy.
Yeah, those
Interlock's a
they
Latrim
dropped out of the
company
top
that
25.
when
boy.
they invented modular
I know.
plastic conveyor
I
belts
enjoyed that.
over 40 years ago. These
I gotta
belts
play
and
West Virginia
innovative
this
Interlock's
weekend. That'll be
technology are
interesting.
West Virginia
transforming
lost to
movement
TCU
in
last night.
manufacturing
I know. I
facilities
figured they were
around the
going on the
world.
road. They might be in
Interlocks
trouble.
is a
I know they
dynamic
lost.
global company now hiring in production, warehousing, shipping, and more. If you want to be part of our successful team, visit Latrim.com. That's LAITRAM.com.
If it's time to top off, flush or refill your cooling system, stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts for Prestone Universal Premixed Antifreeze and Coolant, $12.99 a gallon. Plus, earn double O Rewards points for this purchase of Prestone Universal Premixed Antifreeze and Coolant at O'Reilly Auto Parts. Better parts, better prices every day. Limits apply. See store for details.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Okay, children, we're done with the alphabet. Next subject, financial well-being. How to manage your money. Turn to page 5 of your textbook.
When it comes to money, you can never start learning too early. That's why starting today, State Farm wants to give you the tools and support you need to take control of your finances.
Tonight, read the chapters on credit cards and balance transfers. Pop quiz tomorrow.
Find out more at letstarttoday.com. State Farm, here to help life go right.
What's up, Will?
There it is.
Whether you ride the wave or like to growl, we're talking your teams. Sports 1280, New Orleans.
Welcome back, and we welcome in to the program one of our favorite guests, our regular Wednesday afternoon guest, is coming in on Tuesday, and I think that's appropriate, Will, after last night's performance by Boogie Cousins and the big win. What time did you get to sleep last night? It must have been a late one. You must have probably still been jazzed after seeing that epic comeback.
Yeah, I mean, it was a long night, but I mean, it was a fun night for sure. Watching that was some stuff you're gonna remember for a long time. Watching a game like that in person, that was definitely one of the craziest games I've ever seen, for sure.
Now, as a beat writer, we're talking to Will Guillory. He's our Pelicans beat writer at NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. And for the listeners out there that may not be familiar with how the sausage is made in our business, how much of your story had you had written? Come on, be honest, that the Bulls were going to win the game and you were going in one direction like we all do because you have to write during the game. How much had you had written and then had to reverse course?
Oh, I would say around probably the 5-minute mark, probably right when they started the run. I was probably 80% done with my story about, how the Pelicans, another collapse, another performance, regrettable performance. They need to get this thing back on track. And then right around like maybe the half-minute mark, everybody up in the media row is kind of looking around like, what is happening right now? And then obviously, Drew Holiday hits the big three to tie the game. AD gets the dunk to put up, and then we were all just kind of scrambling. It was just silence up there. It was obviously super loud in the Smoothie King Center, but on media row, it's just you heard nothing but just a whole bunch of typing going on.
What's up, Will? Jim D here. Look, let us know what was we were talking about after the game, and just was it more exhaustion? Was it more relief? Was it more amazement at what Boogie had done? What was kind of the sense afterward?
I mean, with DeMarcus in particular, he was just gassed. I mean, the guy, he just made several jokes after the game about this, how he had nothing left. He said, one of the things he said, he was like, man, I didn't even really care who made the shot. I just wanted the game to be over with. You know, it didn't matter which way it went. We were just all just ready to go home at some point. And I think really after a game like that, you obviously want to come away with the win, but just to win it the way they did, I think that's a game that they're going to remember for the rest of the season. And I think it's the type of win that can bring a team together when you kind of put it all on the line that way. With you lose AD in overtime. Drew doesn't have necessarily one of his best games of the season, and you still find a way to win. I think that's the type of game we've been looking for from this Pelicans team all season, and the way they pulled it out it's got to be a promising sign for where they're headed. Going as we head into this All-Star break.
Will, Clyde here. Just wanted to get your thoughts specifically. We talked about this going into the opening of the show, but talk a little bit about Jrue Holiday. Obviously the last couple of games, he's really put his foot down with scoring. I harken back to your story about how, Anthony wasn't getting as many shots as he was the previous few games because Jrue's been on a hot streak. But last night, clearly they needed him for his defense. They needed him for ball movement. And then obviously the scope of having to play his brother and having to try to hold him down. Can you talk a little bit about his play last night and what he's been able to do and how well he's been playing over the course of the last month?
Yeah, absolutely. I think coming into the night, he was averaging around 25 points a game over his previous 5, and he's obviously putting up maybe his best offensive season of his career, and he's kind of fully embraced that role as the third scorer alongside AD and DeMarcus. But last night he kind of had some trouble getting his shot going. He was kind of running all over the place, defending all those different guards the Chicago Bulls have. And DeMarcus said it last night. At some point when they were down about 16 or 18 points, Jrue just kind of looked around and said, hey, I'm going to just establish a tone on the defensive end. And he just kind of shut down everything the Bulls were doing on the offensive end, and they lit a fire under the Pelicans. You could see it on that bench. Those guys were getting hyped up every time Jrue was getting a stop over there, and it kind of I think it was the biggest reason they made that run in the fourth quarter, just the way he kind of defended and kind of, just had that moment where every team just kind of has where they look around and say, enough is enough. You kind of have to just say, hey, we're getting beat up right now. We're kind of embarrassing ourselves at home, and you kind of just got to show some pride. And I think that was the biggest thing from last night was this team has so often this year kind of taken those big losses on the chin, and they kind of come out with an effort, and everybody's coming away kind of shaking their head. But last night it was just a huge pride when just kind of everybody just kind of look around and say, hey, we're not going to let this happen on our home court. And the fact that it came on the defensive end has to be huge for this team considering how bad they've been on that end all year.
Well, high water mark now, 4 games over 500. You kind of touched on it, but I mean they have got to follow up with this now. I mean you can't keep doing what they've been doing. Win at Boston, lose at Atlanta, lose to the Grizz a couple weeks ago after winning big game. Just talk about how important the next week or 2 weeks is going to be to show whether this team is really going to be in the mix for that 4 or 5 seed and get themselves in position to where they have a chance to not just get to the playoffs, but make a move in advance.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as of right now, they're sitting at number 6 in the West, and like you said, they're 4 games over 500 for the first time this season. They have to feel pretty good about themselves. They're right there on 1 game behind OKC for the 5 seed, which is kind of crazy considering, just like we said, how up and down they've been all season. But all it takes is a 2 or 3 game losing streak in the West, and you're dropping back down to 8 or 9. So I think it's just so tight in that Western Conference. I think that's part of the reason they're kind of having a fire lit under them as a week, because they know how tight it's going to be coming down the stretch in March and April, getting into the playoffs. And you have to keep putting up wins, and they're playing games against some of these losing teams out in the Eastern Conference where they've struggled against those teams surprisingly during the year. But stacking up these wins is got to help a lot down the road where you get a little bit of cushion, and maybe you're fighting down the end to maybe get a 6-7 seed instead of just fighting just to make the playoffs, which is a huge difference. Playing a Golden State round 1 is a lot different than playing maybe San Antonio without Kawhi Leonard round 1. So I think that's a huge part of the motivation for this team going forward. And They just have to keep establishing that consistency, winning these games they're supposed to win, and that's the way you can kind of build on something. You can kind of look around and say, hey, maybe we're able to add another guy in the offseason. Maybe we can build this thing to the next level, but maybe that's not the case if you know, scraping your way into the playoffs as the 8 seed. Maybe the perspective around the league is a lot different going into the offseason.
Talking to Will Guillory, Pelicans beat writer for NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. And Will, look, you know I've been as big a critic of Boogie Cousins as there is, but I was blown away last night by his overall performance. And I was saying earlier in the program, the thing that impressed me the most wasn't necessarily the numbers, it was the effort. You know, going to the glass the way he was going, getting some of those key offensive rebounds, playing defense, frankly. I mean, he was the main guy playing defense in the paint last night once AD went out, and then he goes out and makes this mid-court steal. That was a huge play in the game. He made that steal and forced, I think, a open court foul on Robin Lopez. What did he have to say afterwards about maybe his effort overall and how tired he must have been playing 51 minutes?
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, he was just gassed after the game, and he joked about how strength and conditioning coach came up to him and asked if he wanted to go lift after the game, and he looked at him like, man, are you crazy? Like, I could barely walk right now. And it's kind of, I think a lot of last night was, just like you said, losing AD, and they were just so desperate to get that win, especially after coming back the way they did in the fourth quarter. Justin Holiday missing a free throw at the end of the overtime. There was so much life in the building. You don't want to end it with a loss. And I think, just like you said, I think the biggest part was the defense, just the way Alvin Gentry said last night. At times, some of those Chicago Bulls pick and rolls, he was kind of guarding 2-3 guys at the same time, kind of stopped trying to prevent those shots in the paint. And when he's kind of playing with that much effort and that much energy, it lifts everybody else on the team. And I think it also, as you've commented on this before, when he's not bringing that effort, it also rubs off on everybody else on the team. So when you see him just diving on the floor, making those plays on fast break opportunities, playing defense, attacking the boards, it shows everybody else the way they should be playing. And when this team plays with a lot of effort, they're tough to deal with because obviously they're one of the best offensive teams. They have two of the best offensive players in the league. So if they're just out there just giving everything they got on the defensive end, they're able to compete with just about anybody. And it starts with the way DeMarcus and AD kind of control everything in the paint, control the glass. And that was huge last night, especially DeMarcus hitting the offensive glass. Well, against a smaller Bulls team, obviously had Robin Lopez, but besides that, it didn't really have enough bigs to kind of deal with DeMarcus and AD. And once AD went out, it was just kind of the DeMarcus show, and that was the biggest reason they got that win.
Yeah, last night I thought at one point, and I don't know what period of time it was, it might have been the overtime. I think it was in one of the overtimes, but Holiday's defense on the perimeter was so strong, and when Grant would finally get by him, the rare time he would get by him, he was afraid to take it into Cousins. You could see it. He wouldn't put it up in the lane, and that is huge. I mean, if they can get Cousins to be a rim protector too, because he can do it, but he's not known as, like, say, AD in the paint the same way. But I thought last night they were scared to death of bringing it into Cousins, and that was a huge reason why they won. We were talking earlier, Clyde and I, on the program about how if they score one basket, if Chicago figures out how to get one basket taken to the basket, getting fouled, there wasn't any margin for error for the Pelicans to really come back. And I think Cousins' presence in the paint fueled that, along with Holiday on the perimeter.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think you saw a couple of times last night where there were a few crucial situations where the Bulls were maybe down 2, tie ball game, and they were kind of just taking fadeaway jump shots.
Yep.
They were kind of pulling up for three just because, like you said, they didn't want to go in the paint.
Right.
They didn't want any parts of DeMarcus. And I think also a part of that is when DeMarcus is as stout as he was in the paint last night, it allows AD to get out in the brink. And you saw last night a couple times DeMarcus hit AD with those baseball passes football passes down the court, where a couple of times, the media kind of cringes when DeMarcus throws those passes because you don't know where they're going to go, if it might fly into the third row or something like that. But if AD doesn't feel as if he has to be that rim protector, he can get out on the break and use his athleticism. We know if AD's out on the break, there's not many guys that are going to stop him from getting to the rim. So if they can get both of those guys defending the paint, AD out on the break, DeMarcus controlling the glass, it's really hard to stop this team on the fast break situations. Obviously, they have the shooters to knock down shots from the perimeter. Drew Holiday's playing really well, so they're extremely efficient on offense. They can get pretty much any shot they want all the time, and if they can control the paint on the defensive end, then this team is looking really dangerous going into the playoffs, and they might have a chance to make some noise. But again, it has to start with just bringing that consistent effort every night. And I know it's kind of crazy that we're saying this about a team that has this much potential, but this is the kind of the position they put themselves in, where if they can just bring that same effort every night, then they can certainly compete for that 5-6 seed in the West.
Agreed, 100%. Will Guillory, thanks, buddy. Thanks for joining the program after a late night. I know that you put in a lot of time chronicling and documenting that night, but that's what makes it fun, when you cover those big games like that. That's why we're in the business, to be able to document a historical night like that. You'll remember that one for a long time. Thanks, Will.
Hey, thank you guys. Absolutely. I remember that one for a long time, sure.
All right, that's Will Guillory, NOLA.com, Times-Picayune. Pelicans beat reporter does an incredible job for us covering the Pelicans, and he's got a tough job because that's a tough job. That's a long season. NBA season, yep. And a lot of late nights, but it makes it all worthwhile when you cover a game like last night. All right, let's take another break. When we come back, we'll hear from Brett Martell of the Associated Press on his thoughts of last night's game. You're listening to Sports 1280, NOLA.com, the iHeartRadio app. We are Duncan Holder. Stay with us.
New Year's resolutions.
Nice. Old school right there, baby.
Being a better person.
Is that the Fat Boys?
No, that's exactly what it was.
Tickets? Yeah.
Sound like the human beatbox or whatever.
Fat Boys are back.
Yeah.
Oh, it was Fat Boys?
Don't ever doubt my
Everybody loves
full
the
rap
Fat Boys.
acumen. Look at Clyde, he's astounded.
I am
I
very
actually thought it was DMC too.
I'm not going to lie. That's
dumbfounded.
By the way,
one thing Americans never give up.
Jazz Fest headliners are out.
In fact,
I saw that.
TV reaches 86%
I was going to mention that at the top.
Can't wait.
Commercials just like this one.
Nobody kills me.
I'm going to see Anita Baker. You crazy. Aerosmith, Aretha Franklin, Sting, Jimmy Buffett, Jack White. Yeah, Sting, Jimmy Buffett, Jack White, Beck, Lionel Richie, David Byrne.
Lionel Richie?
Bonnie Raitt.
Company in 2018.
All right, minute and 10 seconds, and we got Brett.
Sturgill Simpson, Jack Johnson, Sheryl Crow, Common, Casey Elephant, The Revivalists, Steve Miller Band.
Oh,
there's still a band?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, they're still kicking. Jason Isbell and Aaron Neville.
Old Crow Medicine Show, baby.
Oh, you mean the people who actually sing that song?
Sang Wagon Wheel, the
original Wagon Wheel, the best Wagon Wheel.
I need to borrow your chord.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
We can do it at the big break.
Okay.
Have you ever worked at a place where they didn't want you talking about your salary? Actually, have you ever worked anywhere where they did? Unlikely. But don't you have a right to know?
Brett,
if
too,
only there were a simple solution.
About Saints or something.
Well,
Y'all want to get a question?
How we find jobs.
Whatever you want to ask, Brett.
On Indeed.com,
we can
our company reviews
at the top of the hour.
give you
Mardi
the
Gras
inside
break
track on thousands of companies.
What's
you
that?
can research salaries,
the Mardi Gras
benefits, company
break.
cultures,
It's not as
and
bad as
more,
usual.
all on Indeed.com. Search for greatness. Search Indeed, the world's #1 job site. Indeed is the world's #1 job site.
I'm less than enthralled.
Got issues with youth or high school sports?
Well, you got to figure Burns going to play a lot of talking heads.
A national nonprofit.
I'd go see
Jack Johnson. I'd go see him.
Online resources
I'm an eater of bus, man. I'm going to see her. I don't care. I'm going to see her.
Oh, boy.
I can't wait. Jesus.
He's going to be looking like that.
George Benson.
This
what?
is Dunc and Holder on Sports 1280, New Orleans.
Welcome back. Jeff Duncan, Clyde Verdun, Jim Derry in the house, wrapping up hour one, and we have a great guest, one of our favorite guests on the program, Brett, as Larry Holder calls him, the model Martell, who was in the Smoothie King Center last night for that epic performance by DeMarcus Cousins. Brett, what did you think as you were watching that comeback last night? I'm sure you were just like Will Guillory, already had your story written that the Pels were going to lose the game. And then as a veteran scribe that you are, I'm sure you quickly reversed course and authored a remarkable game story for the Associated Press. What was your thought process as that thing played out?
Well, when the Bulls opened the fourth on a 23-5 run and led by 18, I started writing the article as if the Bulls were going to win. I think I had the term raced away from the Pelicans in the fourth quarter as the lead. And I gradually had to change it to held on in the face of a furious comeback bid. And then when it got down to about 5 points, and I think there was maybe 1 minute and 30 left. I'm trying to remember exactly how much time there was, but I think they trimmed it to 5 with a little under 2 minutes to go. I thought, okay, now I better, write a lead that says the Pelicans pulled off an extraordinary comeback. I mean, they were down. I really wasn't that worried, even with 5 minutes to go. With 5:06 to go, they were down 17 points. And really, I mean, still with, I think, a little under 5 minutes to go before they started the comeback. And to see a 21-2 run in basically a 4.5 minute span, we've seen the Pelicans be explosive like this before, but to turn it on when you have zero margin for error and pull it off like that is highly unusual. I've covered the NBA since it came back to New Orleans in 2002, and I don't quite recall a game like that.
You know what it reminded me of, Brett, which you can relate to, was the Super Bowl, where you hit the nail on the head. There was no margin for error. If Chicago figures it out and makes one drive to the basket and gets to the free throw line, gets a couple of easy free throws or something, I think it kills the Pelicans' comeback. But once that ball started rolling, and credit to the Pelicans defensively locking them up and really never giving them an easy two points on the free throw line or anything. I mean, the defense they played was remarkable, but it also begs the question, where is that at? I know you can't extend that kind of energy for 48 minutes in an NBA game, but it was not there to start the second half.
Yeah, it's a curious thing with this team, and I think they themselves don't seem to have an answer for why that happens. Obviously, it's human nature. We have ebbs and flows in performance and energy and biorhythms and so forth. But, you'd like to think that elite pro athletes have the kind of mental fortitude and physical conditioning to transcend some of that, and we've seen athletes who do that on a consistent basis. And that's the problem here is that, they don't seem to be very consistent. And, they're not consistent from game to game. They're not consistent within games. And they know it. And they're working on it. And I guess the good news for Pelicans fans is that, when they are playing well, you see their potential. And in spite of all their issues, they're very much in the playoff hunt and a few games above 500 here. So it's going to be probably, a compelling stretch drive to the end of the regular season.
Brett, Jim Derry here. Just talk a little bit about what kind of tacking on to what you just talked about. The last sentence you just said there, the stretch run. And this is a big run coming up for them. You got to follow up. You're at your high water mark of the season at 500. Just talk about how important it is going to be going to the Hornets, play the Hornets, but then coming home for 3 in a row before getting into some really big games and, playing Houston and the Clippers and then one with the Kings. But just talk about the next week and a half to 2 weeks and how important that is, maybe the key stretch of the season.
Well, they're just at the point now where, because the West is still relatively tight, they just can't have any more of these duds where they lose to teams that, they've clearly established that they're better than those teams. On the road, it's a little more forgivable, but actually the Pelicans' road record, which is 500, is better than several of the teams, at least last I checked, that are ahead of them, such as San Antonio, Oklahoma City, and Minnesota. Their problem has been, laying some eggs at home against teams that are not currently in the playoff picture, such as Orlando, Dallas, Sacramento, New York. So, and although the Bulls are not currently in the Eastern Conference playoff picture, they had won 15 out of 23 and 4 out of 5 coming in. They have really been a lot better lately. So, and they're young and energetic and look like a dangerous team to play on any given night. And the Pelicans survived that. So, Well, yeah, you can excuse when they lose to. You'd like to see them pick up some big wins against the Houstons and so forth, but you can at least excuse those losses. But they're going to have to beat everybody else, especially at home. And their home record is actually, the problem. I mean, I guess they won 2 straight at home now, so they're 13-9. But they should probably be a lot closer to, I mean, I'm not doing the math right, but say 17-5 at home at this point.
Brett, kind of taking into account not only really what kind of is going on with the Pelicans, but at the end of the day, the entirety of the NBA. Obviously, you had the Bucks pull the plug on the Jason Kidd experiment, and they're 7 in the East right now, 2 games over 500. You talk about all the craziness going on in Cleveland, and just kind of the zaniness that the NBA year has kind of been. Can you kind of talk to some folks about how this year seems completely different than the last couple of years, because we're talking about not necessarily who, like Cleveland and the Warriors playing each other, but we're talking about Toronto's, your Boston's, and your Minnesota Timberwolves of the year, because this NBA season's been so crazy.
Yeah, I think people thought Minnesota had some potential because of the Jimmy Butler deal, and look, we've covered him. Chicago had a long winning streak against New Orleans before the season, and Jimmy Butler was a big reason why. He just played lights out when he'd come in here for the Bulls, and so they are an ascending team. Boston, everybody thought they were going to be great, and then Gordon Hayward got hurt, but they would have exceeded expectations since that injury.
2 minutes.
They've been a playoff team for a while. What does strike me though is some of these hasty coach firings. It's been kind of weird, whether we're talking about Memphis or Milwaukee. I know Milwaukee has a guy that looked great in the All-Star game last year in New Orleans, Giannis Antetokounmpo, but and maybe they somehow expected more from this team than they're already getting. But the NBA, there seemed to be, a theme the last couple of years of actually quite a bit of patience with coaches, Alvin Gentry included. And at this point, you'd have to kind of expect, unless they go into a major tailspin, that patience to include to continue locally. But there's some compelling teams on the rise, and it's going to be fun to watch.
That's Brett Martell from the Associated Press. Brett, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you down the road here locally
1 minute.
At one of the arenas or sporting venues in our area. Thanks for joining, bud.
Okay, always good to be with you guys. Take it easy.
That's it, Brett Martell, and that's going to wrap up hour 1 of Dunc and Holder.
You want to talk about a tough beat, Dunc? That guy, when you work for the AP, you are nonstop.
Yeah, he's all over the place, does a great job for the Associated Press, and we will continue to do a great job here at Sports 1280 as we carry over Dunc and Holder to hour 2. We're going to continue this Pelicans talk. We'll get into some
first hour
NFL talk as well in hour 2, and we'll hear from Fletcher Mackel at the top of the hour.
Can't wait for that one.
Oh boy.
You are listening, Sports 1280, NOLA.com, the iHeartRadio app. We are Dunc and Holder. Stay with us.
The follower of Farrakhan. Don't tell me that you understand until you hear the man. The book up the new school rap game. Writers treat me like Coltrane, insane. Yes to them, but to me, I'm a different kind. We're brothers on the same mind, unblind.
I'm here for George Benson, though. Absolutely. I am here for George Benson.
On Broadway, right?
Yeah. Breezing, on Broadway.
Perfect.
Oh, yeah, dude, take that.
And to make your family comfortable. So if you ever
what
have
else
a
am I
problem,
thinking?
you want someone who will be there
Love
to help
times
you right
love.
away. At Burkhardt Air Conditioning and Heating, that's
Oh, yeah. I'm here for George Benson. Absolutely.
Love times love.
Our NATE certified technicians
They
provide
say the
emergency
neon
service
lights
anytime
are
and
bright
any brand of
on
cooling system.
Broadway.
If you need help anytime, call us.
Turn your love around.
Running again quickly and professionally. And if you're thinking about an
Oh, yeah,
upgrade
absolutely.
right now,
Jim knows what I'm
you can
talking
save
about.
With quality cooling equipment from
you turn me
These systems come with incredible warranties, and we have 5 years interest-free financing available now. Plus,
Oh, yeah, I'm
our
here for
Amana
this.
brand
I'm here for
HVAC
Jazz
systems
Fest,
are
Brian.
highly efficient. With Burkhardt's 25%
Of course you will
energy
be.
reduction guarantee, you'll continue saving on utility bills for years to come. Whether it's an emergency repair or a brand new cooling system, we're here to help when you need us. Trust Burkhardt Air Conditioning and Heating. Visit acpromise.com.
WODT WNOE FM HD2 New Orleans. Listen on the free iHeartRadio app. Search Sports 1280. Fox Sports Trending now.
3 more head coaching vacancies have been filled. The Titans introduced new head coach Mike Vrabel on Monday. Dick LeBeau will not be returning as the Titans defensive coordinator. The Tennessean the first to report that. The Giants officially named Pat Shurmur as the team's next head coach. He was formerly the Vikings offensive coordinator. And Panthers defensive coordinator Steve Wilks is now the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. And while the Patriots are optimistic that tight end Rob Gronkowski will be cleared of his concussion to play Super Bowl on February 4th, and former Steelers offensive coordinator Todd Haley will be the new offensive coordinator for the Cleveland Browns. Down at the Australian Open, top men's seed Rafael Nadal is out of the tournament. He retired in the 5th set of his quarterfinals match against Marin Cilic with a right leg injury. I'm Deb Carson.
We are Mark. O'Reilly.
Save on your next oil change when you purchase 5 quarts of Valvoline Max Life Motor Oil and a MicroGuard filter for the price of Valvoline Conventional, just $24.99. Save big with Valvoline Oil and Filter Specials at O'Reilly Auto Parts. Better parts, better prices every day.
So
Limit supply. See store for details.
Has it gone down? Wow.
It started.
Yeah, it started 5.5, 6. Some places, yeah.
Hi, Eric Ashwood, celebrity chef Scott Craig of Katie. Scott, you have to be excited about Katie's expanded second floor seating and private
Yeah, so
dining.
James Harden had 464 turnovers last year.
You know,
Westbrook had 438. Cousins is on pace for 417. Something like a 418.
You know, but the craziest thing about that yesterday, obviously, is you're talking about the two people who led those, the last two MVP hardcore candidates. Yeah, the MVP winner last year.
But I'm a little conflicted on that because, you know, I played ball, and if you put the ball in somebody's hands every time
For
down the court,
game-changing innovation,
they're
look
going
to
to
the
score a lot of
Latrim
points.
family
They're going to
of
get a lot of
companies
assists.
located in
They
Harahan.
should.
They should.
I mean, you're basically playing every play
they
through
invented
them.
modular plastic conveyor belts over 40 years
the
ago.
numbers
These belts and
when
innovative
that's
interlock
what you're doing.
technology
I mean,
are
if back in the
transforming
day,
movement in
that's what they
manufacturing
did with, like,
facilities
Pete
around the
Maravich.
world.
You know, every time down the
Interlock
court,
is a
just give him the
dynamic
ball.
global company now
Of course you're
hiring
gonna
in
score a lot.
production,
Of course you're gonna,
warehousing,
have a lot of
shipping, and more. If you want to be part of our successful team, visit Latrim.com. That's LAITRAM.com.
The numbers are skewed in that other players weren't doing that. Even Magic Johnson wasn't asked to score the way these guys are scoring. Even Jordan
it will now
didn't
allow
do it that
users
much.
the opportunity to add photos and a description to list a housing rental. ComScore says
They're not going to be able to win. That's what I mean. They're not going to win a title that way.
And the company says its users have
But
posted
the thing
over
that's different
200
with
million
Cousins is
secondhand
Cousins is
listings
going to have the
since
third
its
most
launch in
turnovers in the history of the game, and he's a
Letgo
6'11"
is
center.
dipping its toes into a housing
He's not,
market dominated
you know,
by
he's not even
Craigslist.
supposed to be handling the
Verizon
ball that much.
customers on the basic plan will no longer have to
crazy.
pay for additional
Although
data
Artis
if they
Gilmore
travel
had
overseas.
366
However,
turnovers
if
in
they
that
use
game.
more than a half a gig of data per day, they'll be throttled to 2G speeds. WeWork is turning its office space into a student union. The company that offers shared workspaces is teaming up with online education provider 2U Inc. and will allow students enrolled in digital courses a place to join in-person study groups. 2U offers courses from NYU, Cal, and Yale, while WeWork has more than 200 office spaces around the country that's known for hip decor, free Wi-Fi, and on-tap kombucha. Tech Report, Larry Olson, NBC News Radio.
We'll know more about what they think about where this
Open calendar. What's my schedule looking like?
Next
Thursday, I think
you will be caught
they got to. I hope they're not. I know that they want to make more money
What?
on it.
No,
They're not making
no,
very much
that
money,
doesn't work. I'm
if
busy
at all.
then. Decline.
But I think
Decline.
it's been worthwhile.
Floods don't exactly work around
for
your
the
schedule. Disasters
branding.
don't plan ahead.
Oh, there's no
but
question.
you can.
You know,
it starts
you know,
with
there's a
talking to
value
your
to
loved ones
that.
about making an emergency plan. So don't wait. Communicate. Visit getagagameplan.org.
Yeah,
Brought to you by the
there's no
Louisiana
doubt.
Governor's Office of Homeland
I've
Security and
noticed-
Emergency Preparedness,
I've noticed it
FEMA,
just being
and
out.
the Ad Council.
Way more.
Singer Ed Sheeran is getting married. The British singer-songwriter announcing that he and his longtime girlfriend, Sherry Seaborn, will be tying the knot. On Instagram, Sheeran writing, they are very happy and in love, adding their cats.
All right, we got Fletch.
Sheeran and Seaborn have reportedly known each other since they were kids, but did not start dating until 2015. Seaborn is an accountant. A wedding date has yet to be revealed.
All right, we got 1 minute.
How much? A minute?
Yeah.
Camila Cabello, the first woman to debut at #1 with a debut album on the Billboard 200 album sales chart in 3 years. The Never Be the Same singer, self-titled Camila, entered this week's chart at #1 after selling just under 120,000 units. The last woman to have her first full-length album debut atop the chart was Meghan Trainor with her 2015 set Tidal.
Yeah, that makes sense. Someplace like that. It's got to be the right fit too.
My daughter is.
Rihanna joining the list of performers at the upcoming 60th Annual Grammy Awards ceremony at Madison Square Garden in New York City. She'll be joined by DJ Khaled, Bryson Tiller for a performance of the single Wild Thoughts, which was one of the most
They're about to open their
of last summer.
Their new spot in on what mag?
Billy Joel scheduling his 100th concert at New York Madison Square Garden. It'll be held on July 18th with tickets ranging in price from $65 to $140.
Doug McCash's story on Jazz Fest doesn't have the dates of Jazz Fest.
Well, because we talked about this yesterday. They don't release the dates yet. Like they release the artists, then the dates and the stages.
Duncan Holder, Hour 2, talking Pelicans and all other things sports-related in the New Orleans market with Jim Derry sitting in for Larry Holder, who's out sick, day 2.
It's still kind of melancholy around here. It's just, it's just not right.
Yeah, it's the typical post-Saints football season.
Punch in the gut Tuesday.
Yeah, it does. And Clyde Berdan in the house as always. But look, that was an uplifting performance last night by the Pels. So.
Right. We should all be ecstatic after the big Pels win. I mean, that is a really big win last night. And like Will said earlier, it's the kind of win that could get them kick-started. I mean, got to follow this up, guys. Got to follow this game up. You cannot lay any more eggs like they've been laying.
I think everybody, it's that kind of a gulf between football season and the start of Mardi Gras. There's always a little bit of a lull in the city as everybody's gearing up. They're in their house getting their costumes ready, getting greased up for Mardi Gras.
Well, if you're in Philly, you get greased up and just climb up the pole.
Climb up poles.
Hit a horse.
Throw full beer cans at Vikings fans.
By the way, breaking news, Jazz Fest lineup is announced for this year. Listen to this lineup. See what you think. I'm underwhelmed. You all seem excited. Aerosmith, Aretha Franklin, Sting, Jimmy Buffett, Beck, Jack White, David Byrne, Lionel Richie, and Anita Baker are kind of the headliners.
He's just underwhelmed because Frank Sinatra's not around anymore to play.
To sing the
Jerry Vale.
The best one on the list is Trombone Shorty, who closes the thing down. He's who I would go see. I don't know. No one else there really gets me.
Well, I haven't been at Jazz Fest in 15 years or so because, as Yogi Berra once said, nobody goes there. It's too crowded.
Well, let's go to someone who lives very close to the fairgrounds.
We can park at his house.
And Jazz Fest grounds. As a matter of fact, Fletcher could probably open up a little parking lot on his lawn and make a little extra money, a little
$10
side,
a car.
little side hustle. Fletcher Mackel, sports director, WDSU TV. Fletch, do you do the parking thing at your house, or are you that person that puts out the garbage cans out in front of their place, won't let you park on their spot because you're so close to the fairgrounds?
Get out of my lawn, you kid.
Let me say this. My neighbor does that, and my wife despises it. She literally looks out the window, and if looks could kill, the neighbors would be dead right now because they put the trash cans around their property. We love our neighborhood. We do not have off-street parking. So when you talk about turning my property into a parking lot, for Endymion, Jazz Fest, and Bayou Boogaloo, there are moments that my lawn becomes my parking spot so I don't have to park 2 miles away from my own house.
Nice.
Fair enough.
I understand that.
Just wait till you get a little older, Fletch. Get out of my lawn, kid. Come on.
It's what happens when you live near the fairgrounds. It's part of the deal. It's one of the great things about it. It's also kind of one of the little bit of the hassles when you're there for Jazz Fest. All right, let's switch gears real quick. Enough of the Jazz Fest talk. Were you in the house last night? Did you watch the Pels game, and what did you think of that performance, not only from DeMarcus Cousins, but the Pelicans in general in making that remarkable comeback?
Yeah, look, it was tremendous last night. I agree with Jim that it's a great win, but here's the problem with that. The Pelicans were up double digits. Then they fell down double digits, down 17, only to come storming back on a 21-2 run and send it to overtime. Cousins was historic. We know, first player since Wilt Chamberlain to go 40, 20, and 10 in the game. But we've been saying all season long after some of these big, emotional, historic individual performance wins they've turned a corner, and this is going to kind of catapult them into a nice sustained winning streak, and it hasn't happened yet. So when they do it, I'll believe it. But I will say this, that win last night showed tremendous grit, tremendous guts, and it was a nice win last night. And it was thrilling at home for a fan base that needs to see performances like that.
Fletch, you touched on it, and we've been talking about it all morning, but, they're in a spot now where being 6 in the West, they're only 2 games behind 5, but they're only 2 games above 9. So there really isn't any more room to lay any more eggs, and so you obviously don't trust them that they're not going to lay a few more eggs.
Well, here's the thing. You're right, because they haven't proven they can be consistent. They follow up the best win of the season, maybe in Boston, snap the Celtics 7-game winning streak. Davis goes 40+, and then the next night they go to Atlanta and lose to the worst team in the NBA. So they've proven to us that they can't be trusted. When they sustain some winning, then I'll trust them. Look, somewhere in that roster, somewhere in that Smoothie King Center, there's a really good team, and we see that on certain nights. But somewhere in there as well, there's a really bad demon laying in there that surfaces from time to time against the bottom feeders of the NBA, and that also is the bad thing about this team. Let me say this. The one thing I'm concerned about with this team going forward is health. Look, it's great what Cousins did last night, but he played 52+. Davis would have played 50+ if he wouldn't have fouled out. 41 games, the Pelicans haven't dealt with injury. Holiday's been healthy. Cousins has been healthy. Davis has been healthy. If they sustain any type of injury, they are going to go the wrong way fast. They really have to add some big man depth to help out Davis and Cousins, because I just don't know if it's sustainable for 41 more games.
Fletch, the question I get a lot about the Pelicans, which I'm sure you get as well, is, okay, we agree this team's inconsistent. It's actually inconsistent with its effort even. Within a game, you can see the inconsistent effort. What we saw at the end of the game was remarkable. Obviously, they're not going to sustain that over 48 minutes, but you want to see better effort than what they gave early on, where clearly the Bulls were just out-hustling them, beating them up and down the court. So my question is, whose fault is that? Is that Alvin Gentry's fault, the coaching staff? Is it the leaders of the team, Anthony Davis and Boogie Cousins, or is it everybody involved?
I'd probably, I know the cop-out answer, Jeff, is it's everybody. If I had to lay blame at one person, I'd probably lay it on Cousins, and here's the reason why. Not because it's directly his fault, but indirectly, everybody has to baby Boogie. And so if Gentry pulls him because he's complaining to a referee and not hustling back on defense, and that hurts the team, Gentry can't pull him out of the game, because that means he's going to sulk and probably disengage from that game. So I think he affects everyone, in that kind of a trickle-down effect to the coaching staff. It affects how Gentry coaches. It affects the energy of the rest of the team. So while I think everybody is culpable, so to say, I think that because everyone is worried about Cousins and his psyche and how you handle him because he's such a wild card, I think that therein lies their problems. Now, therein also lies a lot of their success, because he's a great player who nobody can duplicate what he does, and he really does make these other guys better offensively, at least. So again, I would have to say he's part of the blame, but he's also part of the solution. And I know that doesn't make sense and sounds weird, but the Pelicans are weird and hard to figure out this year because of that.
Yeah, well, then that kind of brings up the next question. You're the GM. What do you do this offseason? What are you going to do? Because, I mean, obviously it's high risk, high reward.
You have to re-sign DeMarcus Cousins, absolutely, positively, without question, because here's the thing. This is a star league, and you need great players to win. Go ask Oklahoma City how they fared when they tried to replace Kevin Durant with role players who are better team guys that fit better with Russell Westbrook. It doesn't work. So, look, I see the body language and the optics of what Cousins does, and I know how bad he is defensively, but he is such an amazing talent offensively that he cannot be replaced if he leaves New Orleans. The only salvageable thing would be a sign and trade and try to get a star player back if he really wants to leave, but you've got to at least make him some crazy offer to keep him here and go all in because you cannot replace what he does in the free agent market or with role players trying to fill that void.
Yeah, and I think the long game that the Pelicans are playing here is that he continues to mature, that he continues to get on board, that some of these things that have kept him and his teams from winning consistently in the past will slowly kind of mature out of his game, and that he will be on board and be this superstar that you can clearly see his talent will manifest itself into during a game. I mean, no one can handle the guy inside the paint at all, but it's a long game you're playing here, and how long do the Pelicans have to play that long game, especially with Gentry and Demps? I don't know what the answer is. What do you think, Fletch? I mean, do you think if this team gets in the playoffs, gets the 6th, 7th seed, gets eliminated in the first round, is that going to be good enough for the fan base to continue to stay on board?
Yeah, and that's a great question. I ask myself that almost every day when I talk about this team, because it's such a great debate to have, and you can make a great argument either way. They fired Monty Williams because they wanted a coach to, quote-unquote, take them to the next level. If this team gets into the playoffs this year and maybe wins a couple of games and goes out in the first round, you can make the argument that maybe it's time for a change for a coach and GM that can take them to the next level. But you could also make the argument that, hey, look, maybe you're on the cusp of something special, that if you finish 6 or 7, this is a team when Cousins and Davis are going good. I don't think they're going to get swept in the playoffs this year. I think they're going to be able to win a game or two. I don't think defensively they're so bad they can't win a round against a team like the Spurs, the Rockets, or the Warriors. But they can win a game or two, and I think that's going to lead to Mickey Loomis and Tom Benson bringing back Dell Demps, bringing back Alvin Gentry, re-signing Cousins, and saying, hey, we feel like we're on the cusp of breaking through. And you tell me this all the time, Jeff, and you've convinced me over the years that, if anything, the hierarchy on Airline Drive is loyal to a fault almost. And so I think if this team gets in, wins a couple of games, and Cousins and Davis excite people in the playoffs, that's going to be enough to run it back with everyone and keep heading in the direction that they're heading. And I could certainly make the argument that's not the right thing to do, but I think if it ends up going that way, that's what they'll do.
Well, because this is still stewing in my belly, then why weren't they loyal to Monty? I think this team would be a lot different team with Monty Williams at the helm, and I think that we wouldn't have to worry about laying eggs. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, look, here's the thing. Hindsight is always 20/20. I thought it was appalling that Monty Williams was fired, but they were high on hope, so to say, and they were, they had these visions of being the Golden State Warriors South, and that's what Dell Demps sold them on. That you looked at the roster he created, and he talked about, Mark Jackson was fired in Golden State. They were a 6 seed. Steve Kerr takes over. He's a player's coach. He's laid back. He opens up the offense, and they become the best team in recent basketball memory. Dell Demps, I think, looked at the team and said, the way Monty coaches is not the way I want to play, and he convinced leadership, the Bensons and Mickey Loomis, that, this team had to be unleashed, that Monty, these weren't kids anymore. Davis isn't 18 anymore. These are veterans. He's taken them as far as he can take them, and he drew the parallels to Mark Jackson in Golden State. He needed to get a Steve Kerr type in and unhandcuff this team. So he goes and gets Steve Kerr's top assistant, and obviously, we can look at it now and say that it all went sideways and it didn't work out. But that's why Monty was let go. And again, I think it was the wrong decision. But that doesn't mean they're gonna do it again. I think they'll probably learn from maybe the error of their ways and try to be more patient this time and loyal to Dell and Alvin. Not that they haven't been loyal, but I think that if they get into the playoffs, they'll remain loyal to those two guys.
Fletcher, first time we've talked to you since the Saints season ended. You and I were both up in Minneapolis for that epic finish to the divisional playoff game. What were your thoughts that night? I'm sure you were like all of us, stunned at what had transpired. And what do you take away from this Saints season, the success they had?
I was in shock, Jeff. I have to admit. I mean, it was one of those things. We were watching it. I couldn't believe it was happening. I couldn't believe what I had just seen. I think the cover of your newspaper got it right. And by the way, I love the story with Mark Lorando about the genesis of the headline: expletive, expletive, expletive. I thought that was really good because I think that's what a lot of us or feeling and thinking being there. Look, I think the Saints, Drew Brees in recent years has said things like, we're an ascending team and we're headed in the right direction. And while we all love Brees because he's the greatest athlete in our city's history and one of the greatest citizens, I don't know if anybody really believes that. But now I think you look at this team, and it is a team that's an ascending team with Kamara and Lattimore, all the amazing talent they've added in the draft and free agency in 16 and 17. And you say, hey, look, they could be right there in the NFC for the next few years. I still can't, and maybe, look, I don't want to be the pessimist or Debbie Downer, but I think it's our job to be, very partial. I also look at the Saints during the Sean Payton and Drew Brees era here, and I think it could be remembered while they are one of historically the greatest teams in NFL history offensively. I think this great run over the last decade plus could be looked at tremendous squandered opportunities too, because in 2011, that was a squandered opportunity to end up in the Super Bowl. And this was a tremendous opportunity for the Saints. I know Philadelphia looked great in that NFC Championship game, but the momentum New Orleans would have had, I think it would have been a much better game than what Minnesota gave them. So I think that the needle is pointed in the right direction, to use the Breeze cliche. But I think there should also be a lot of remorse on Airline Drive, because you've had some great opportunities to get Breeze in this franchise to another Super Bowl, and they have had some tremendous heartbreaking meltdown letdowns at the end of crucial games in the postseason.
And Fletch, it's clear. The window with number 9 at quarterback is closing rapidly, and the next year and the next 2 years are going to be ones that Saints fans are going to be hanging on every game a little bit more than they might normally do, even during the regular season, knowing that there's only a handful left with as you say, the best athlete ever to play in this city.
Yeah, and here's what concerns me. I mean, as we sit here right now, and you look at the NFC next year, I certainly think you talk about the Saints as a legitimate playoff team. But Carolina's having that same conversation. So is Atlanta. You go over to the West, and the Rams certainly look like a team on the rise. Seattle, I would expect to bounce back in a big way. I mean, you just look at Minnesota, that defense, if they can get a quarterback or even re-sign Case Keenum, Rodgers coming back in Green Bay, a new coach in Detroit with all the talent they have. I mean, Philadelphia's not going anywhere. The Giants may bounce back. I mean, Dallas could have a big bounce back year. The NFC next year is going to be, to me, as talented as it was this year. So you're right, Jim. I mean, every year is the year, supposedly the 4 years can Breeze give this organization, and how many opportunities are they going to get? I hope they get more, and it's not looked back at one great Super Bowl in 2 squandered opportunities, the 2011 season and the 2017 season. I hope they can get to a championship game at least one more time while Breeze is still under center.
That's Fletcher Mackel, sports director at WDSU TV. Fletch, thanks for joining us. Always great insight, and we'll see you down the road here shortly.
No, thanks for having me. And one of these days, by the way, I'm going to be on your show. As much as I love Jim, when Larry's on, it's like Larry refuses to call us out sick. I love being on with you, Jeff, but Larry, the few times I've been on, has not been part of the show. I'm starting to think that that's not coincidence anymore, that is by design.
He's still upset because he doesn't have any hair, Fletch. It's all right.
That's growing back real fast, though, dude.
Yeah, thanks, Fletch. We appreciate always, and great insight from Fletcher Mackel. Always has strong opinions, and I think spot on with his opinions of the Pelicans. Where this team's going, and the fact that they are inconsistent, and probably, to use the Sean Payton line, a lot of dirty hands involved. But last night was pretty encouraging, so it's hard to be too negative 12 hours after one of the great wins in the history of the franchise, I think.
I'm not a one-game guy. And not just because it's the NBA and they play 82 of them, but
they do.
I'm not a one-game guy. I'm not a 4 or 5 game guy. I mean, maybe in the NFL. I mean, the Saints, after starting 0-2 and winning 8 in a row after the 4th game, I'm like, okay, well, maybe this team really is legit. It took me about 4 or 5 games.
That's a quarter of the season.
But that's a month.
That's a quarter of the season.
But they're halfway through the Pelicans season. They're over halfway.
Don't give me a good game or 2 good games or whatever. In the NBA, I need like 10. You don't need to win all 10. And they're on a good stretch. They've won 7 of the last 10. But give me another 7-3 over the next 10, and then I'll say, okay, this team is doing what it's supposed to do.
I'm with you
They're
on
not
that.
yet.
I'm with you on that. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll try and get some callers to join the program and see what their thoughts are on the Pelicans when we come back from this break. You're listening to Sports 1280, NOLA.com, the iHeartRadio app. We are Dunc and Holder.
Your shot at $1,000 now. Text the keyword cash to 200-200. You'll get a text confirming entry plus iHeartRadio info. Standard data and message rates apply. That's cash to 200-200.
It's Hi, Eric Asher, host of Inside New Orleans. Been in the business now for 16 years, talking sports, politics, and news. Talking everything New Orleans, everything Louisiana. Looking forward to joining the crew, as we'll tell it like it is each and every day.
Eric Asher, weekdays, noon to 2. Sports 1280 New Orleans.
You get a strong opinion each and every day.
If you need a payday loan fast, try LendUp.com. Apply in minutes on your phone or computer, and you could have cash in your account fast. LendUp.com, the better payday loan. LendUp.com, subject to availability in your state. LendUp is a licensed credit services organization, not a direct lender, in Ohio and Texas.
Howdy, folks. I'm Colonel Sanders. When I told folks my signature KFC pot pie was filled with delicious Kentucky Fried Chicken, veggies, and topped in a golden flaky crust and only cost $3.99, they said I was crazy. And maybe I was, because that was 1980, and $3.99 was a lot of money back then. But today, getting a meal that size for just $3.99 is a really great deal. So stop into a KFC and get yourself a pot pie. It's finger-licking good. At participating KFCs for a limited time. Prices may vary. Tax extra.
Have you ever worked at a place where they didn't want you talking about your salary? Actually, have you ever worked anywhere where they did? Unlikely. But don't you have a right to know? If only there were a simple solution. Well, now there is.
How we find jobs has changed. On Indeed.com, our company reviews give you the inside track on thousands of companies. You can research salaries, benefits, company cultures, and more. All on Indeed.com. Search for greatness. Search Indeed, the world's #1 job site. Indeed is the world's #1 job site according to ComScore total visits.
When it comes to parenting, there are no perfect answers. But that's okay, because you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Teens in foster care will love you just the same.
For more information on adoption, visit adoptuskids.org. A message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
The drama in Cleveland continues. According to ESPN, the Cavaliers held a team meeting before yesterday's practice. Players upset Kevin Love left Saturday's loss to the Thunder and didn't practice Sunday. Meanwhile, one of the most stable organizations in the NBA
Why did Kevin Love
undergoing some turmoil themselves.
Why did he leave?
ESPN reporting the Spurs and
Kevin
star
Love.
player Kawhi Leonard
because he said he was sick.
Ongoing quad injury. Leonard described as distant and disconnected.
Yeah, he left the arena.
That's what I'm saying. Milwaukee, Jason Kidd out as head coach
hang
of
there
the
with your
Bucks.
team, don't you?
GM John
Yeah, you
Morris.
think so, but I mean, he came, he checked him. He said to check himself out of the game.
Actually contend.
Went in the back.
Didn't want to waste time.
Then left the arena after that, and the guys didn't know. And that's why everybody freaked out.
Coach in the NFL,
right.
former Patriots player Mike Vrabel in place as the new head coach of the Titans. The Cardinals are hiring one-time Panthers defensive coordinator Steve.
15 seconds.
Coach, and the New York Giants are naming former Minnesota Vikings offensive
several players were pushing for the Cavaliers
coordinator.
management and coaching staff to hold Love accountable for leaving the arena before the end of Saturday's game, and then missing Sunday's practice.
Let's wait on me. I want to go through this a little bit more.
This is Dunc and Holder on Sports 1280 New Orleans.
Welcome back. Jeff Duncan, Clad Verdan, Jim Derry, Dunc and Holder wrapping up hour 2. We got another half hour to go. We're talking Pelicans. We want to get your thoughts on the team, the direction of the organization. 504-260-1280 if you want to join the program. Tell us what you think. What did you think of the game last night? And also, what do you think of the Pelicans' chances this year? Do you like where they're going? Do you like what Alvin Gentry's doing? Do you think they should keep this group together? Would you trade DeMarcus Cousins? Would you get rid of the head coaching staff, and Dell Demps, the general manager? What are your thoughts? We'd love to hear from you. And I'm kind of torn right now because I can see the point in keeping the status quo, but also could make an argument changing things out and maybe sparking this dynamic duo that they have in the paint. If you can find the right person, could be the right way to go. I'm kind of torn right now.
It's too early. You can't say. I mean, look, I've said it a couple times. Anyone that's heard me talk about this subject knows how I feel about it. I'm no Alvin Gentry fan. That's probably because I'm biased because I was a huge Monty fan. But you can't talk about making a change at this point or even think about making a change because all you need to be thinking about is what are they going to do the next 2 months.
I mean more like what about the offseason? If this team gets to the question, hypothetical situation, they get in the playoffs, they get beat in the first round, like
they're not going to do it.
Like a lot of people think is going to happen.
I think that you know better than anyone that you've talked about it before. You and I have discussed it before. The Saints are loyal to a fault. I don't know how many teams in the NFL would have kept Sean Payton after last year. I don't think there would have been many. It obviously was the right decisions, but that doesn't mean that
But Sean Payton's won a Super Bowl. He's got a long.
Yeah, he won a Super Bowl 8 years ago.
There are a lot of teams in the NFL who have not won a Super
Bowl 8 years ago.
But I'm saying that's different than what we've got going on with the Pelicans. They don't have those skins on the wall the way Payton had them.
I agree, but I think the only way they would make a change, this is what I think. I mean, I kind of hope I'm wrong, because if they finish in the 7 or 8 seed and they go and lay an egg and go lose 4-0 and it's over, whatever, they need to make a change, but I don't think they will. But I think the only way they're going to make a change is if there is some big name coach out there that they think they can get and lure here. I don't even know who that might be, who might be available, but I don't think they're just going to go and make a change to make a change for change's sake.
Hopefully these aren't the same people that consistently want Joe Dumars to be the general manager, knowing full well that if you understand, you can say that he had a hand in Detroit's upswing, but he did a lot of bad things there than he did good things.
I can still remember, I think it was 2008, having a conversation with the Saints executive. I'll leave it unnamed, but somebody that definitely is in the inner circle of what goes on out there, talking to me about the organization's desire to keep Sean Payton on board. This is in 2008. If you remember, they had the great, remarkable 06 season. 07 was not so great, like 500.
And then they were 7-9.
Yeah, then they were struggling in 08, and the fans were getting upset, and had this conversation with the Saints exec who said, this market needs to stick with Sean Payton. They were selling me on Sean Payton and basically trying to, I guess, influence what I would write down the road. But you know what? They were right, obviously. They won a Super Bowl a year later by being loyal and by being patient. So there is some value in that, taking the bigger picture approach. When you've got the right person, do the Pelicans have the right people involved? That's the question I have.
No.
I don't know.
No, they don't.
Let me stretch out for this one, because this is where I'm going to finally make a couple cases here. I think for me specifically, what I feel like is one of the best pluses, but one of the biggest minus or detriments of following the Pelicans in this current iteration, or following the Pelicans as they've been here since they were the Hornets and the Pelicans, is that we use football logic for something that is completely different than what football is. We use football timing, we use football scheduling, we use everything that we try to put on the Pelicans, we try to use it in a football way because they're linked and because this has been a football city for 50 years. Coaching, players, all of this, all that comes down to, do you have an organization in place that, number one, understands the game, understands what you need, and understands how you can change the league going forward? One, we can talk about Alvin Gentry all we want. Are we going to get any, or is the Pelicans going to get any guys in the offseason, big name, role-playing guys for the bench? That's number one, because that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about a guy, we're talking about a team that doesn't have a bench, that can't cope with neither Anthony Davis or DeMarcus Cousins on the bench. Two, if you do have that coach out there, you're going to get rid of another guy like you did Monty 4 or 5 years ago when he got to the playoffs. There's a couple of questions that I think we're asking that we have to get past before we can start saying, we need to make changes, we need to do this, we need to do that.
All right, hold that rant. I want to pick that up when we come back after this break, because I think you make some good points, but I also think I've got a bone to pick on part of that. So let's carry this over after this break. Sports 1280, NOLA.com, the iHeartRadio app. We are Duncan Holder. Stick with us.
Your forecast on Sports 1280, New Orleans.
Coming back at you, buddy.
Coming back. I've got a bone to pick with
Is
you.
brought to you by Boomtown Casino.
Happy Tuesday from the Fox 8 Weather Center. I'm meteorologist Shelby Latino. A cooler and sunnier day on tap today with temperatures climbing into the upper 50s for highs. We'll keep clear skies through tonight. Temperatures
My wife was telling me
30s
about
north
all
of the lake and low
sorts of
40s
restaurants
south
right
of the
around
lake
there
with highs getting into the mid to upper 50s once again tomorrow. From the Fox 8 Weather Center,
clearly we're going to be further down.
Shelby Latino.
So we'll be closer
Have a
to
great
the
day.
Riverwalk.
This is a
Restaurants there too, so you can walk there, and you
God,
walk
I
a whole
don't
bunch
think
of
the
people.
Riverwalk in
you to
like
speak up
15
if you could
years.
help locate the person responsible for the January 2nd
We went last year because my wife had a
shot in her car at approximately 9 p.m. in the 3700
some kind of convention thing down there. But
Anyone with
I
information on
went a couple
same
times.
here. Yeah.
urged to speak up and call
I guess if you got a wife, you'd probably go.
1111 or
Yeah, but the only reason why I
wife.
went is because her company had like some. They have their big summer banquet right there, and so we had some
Okay,
time to
children,
go.
we're done with the alphabet.
That was the only reason
Next
why I went.
subject.
I mean, I don't even know what's in there.
How to
It's all
manage
new,
your
right? It's
money.
all like
Sounds a good
Yeah,
plan.
but it's
outlet.
they've
outlet
got
shop.
When it comes to money,
yeah, it's
you
mostly
can
like
never start
outlets
learning too early.
because they've
That's why
revamped it
starting
now
today,
because
State Farm wants to
most
give you
of
the
it's like
tools
Neiman
and
Marcus
support you
outlet,
need to take control of your
Adidas outlet,
finances.
all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Tonight, read the chapter.
Hey, Dave, we got one more break right
balance
before
transfers.
the top of the hour.
Yes,
All right.
yes, we do.
Find out more at
Sorry, Dave, I didn't know if we had a caller or what.
State Farm, here to help life
You're
go
just
right.
on a rant. I'll let you go.
Whether you bless those boys or take flight, we're talking your teams. Sports 1280, New Orleans.
Very appropriate
It
song.
was a comeback
for last night.
Yeah.
Pelicans rallying from 17 points down with less than 5 minutes left in the game to beat the Chicago Bulls 132-128. Is this a sign of things to come, or is it just simply one of 82?
There isn't one person on the planet who knows the answer to that.
Yeah. We don't know.
I don't think
This
Alvin
team
Gentry
is so-
knows.
Shoot, I think he's just hoping at this point he can go to Charlotte tomorrow and win before he has to come back home. And you're staring down the Rockets on Friday, the Clippers
sure.
on Sunday, and the Kings next Tuesday.
I'm sure he has a solid game plan, Claude, all put together, and everything's ready to go. The team's all on the same page.
They probably left today. Or
They're
leaving
playing Charlotte on the road, right?
Yeah.
Yes,
Am I
Charlotte's
right
on the
about
road,
that?
yes.
All right, so my point back to your rant,
Here
your
we go,
soapbox
bone
rant.
picking time.
Well, I just think, I guess I'm taking up the cause of the fans, and the fans here have been patient for years, and I just feel like there's more excuses than there are results with the organization. We heard for years, hey, this team's had too many injuries. You can't really judge the powers that be because of all the injuries they've had. And now I keep hearing, well, you got these two bigs together, and it takes time for them to coalesce, and it takes time to learn. And here they've been healthy all year, so that's not an excuse anymore. And I just feel for the fans who have invested a lot of money and a lot of hard-earned dollars to go out to the games, and they've not seen a lot of return on their investment.
And, Jeff, I am in 100% lockstep agreement with you. And the reason why I was speaking that way or trying to, bring all that together is that you think about the casual fan, you think about hardcore fans that have been with this team since the team moved here from Charlotte in the early 2000s. I think you are absolutely 100% correct with the idea that eventually there's going to have to be some return on investment in this team. Now, what I'm saying to that extent is that there's one thing where you could be the Lakers. Now, let's talk about a historic franchise that is going through an absolutely tumultuous time right now, kind of wailing in the bottom of the Western Conference. But we're talking about a team that last night is still in the playoff hunt, has two of the brightest stars in the game that a lot of teams can't say they have, at least in that regard. And then three, it was entertaining. My biggest thing, and I guess the biggest gripe that I saw last night, are the amount of people, specifically on Twitter, or people who are the fair weather casual. I can't get into this. I can't understand it. I'm not going to invest in it. And it's like, how can you not invest in it? It's not like it's not that was an entertaining game. They've played entertaining games the last 3.5 weeks. I'm not saying that we have to be happy with a win like that after losing a big lead. But what I'm saying is that I don't think that at this stage of the game, with the Pelicans being a team that has been here as long as they have, whether or not we can still talk about whether we can invest or divest into a team, knowing full well there are a lot of other cities in this country that would love to have an NBA team, specifically with these two guys, that would absolutely turn an entire city around with this kind of franchise. That's all I'm saying. That's the thing that kind of irks me the most.
Well, I would say this. They were basically boogie or bust on this trade that they made a year ago. It's basically a year ago today almost. I think might have been a year ago today. It was right around this time a year ago when Dell Demps made the trade at the All-Star break. And there's no doubt in my mind that they fleeced Sacramento when you look at the return on that deal.
Yeah.
They got basically one of the 5 or 10 best players in the league, albeit with all kinds of head case issues. And I thought Fletcher hit the nail on the head that when you have DeMarcus Cousins on your team, all this energy is spent dealing with him. And he's so right. You can't just go bench Cousins for not getting back on defense because he'll go into a funk and you'll lose him. And you can't afford to lose him because he's such a talent. And so there's a lot of time spent investing in Boogie and his psyche that I think other teams didn't want to deal with. The Pelicans said, "You know what? We're desperate. We got to do something." And they made this deal with the devil, if you will, to try and bring him along. I think so far you'd say it's probably been the right move, but where's it going? Is it going to win a title? Are they trying to? Is that the goal? I'm sure it is. Are they going to win a title?
So.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know what.
I mean, you would hope that's the goal.
I hope it is too, and I think it is. But are they going to win a title, or is it good enough for them just to make the playoffs every year and be the holdover until the Saints start conditioning again in the fall and everybody starts thinking about the Saints again? What's good enough for this franchise? What do people really want? Is there a passion to win an NBA title? And if so, what are they going to do about it? Because, I mean, right now, I don't think anybody believes this iteration of the New Orleans Pelicans is going to win a title anytime soon.
No, and the sad thing is, to me, they're only a coach and 2 good role players away from being the team you're talking about. They're a coach and 2 good role players away from being the Rockets.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that. I don't know. Who do you think the coach would be that would take this team over the top? Who would, I don't know who's out there. Jason Kidd's out there.
No, you don't want him.
No.
Because that hasn't worked either.
I don't know. I mean, that's the question I have. John Calipari?
Who is the coach? I'm not certain who the coach is, but this isn't the coach.
What do you think, Clyde?
I think at this point, well, I actually think a couple things. I think if you are so willing to get rid of Alvin Gentry that you, again, are willing to put yourself or you're willing to put the organization's head on the stake to say, we're going to get rid of him. We've got this guy in the wings. We're telling you, not only are we going to do that, but we're going to bring in all these free agents and pay these role players and keep these 2 all-stars together. And over the course of the next 2 years, we're going to get this team where it needs to go. You can't guarantee that. So if you are willing to get rid of a guy that's pretty much about to lead your team to the playoffs, hopefully, unless there's an absolute massive collapse, you've got to be willing to put a lot of people's head on stakes because clearly it wouldn't work. For me, I think if you are going to make a change, you have to seriously hardcore look at a guy like David Fizdale, who got relieved of his duties in Memphis because he clearly is a dude who was with the Heat organization He was with the Heat organization for almost double-digit years, helped them when both LeBron, Chris Bosh, and Dwayne Wade were on that team to help coalesce that team and gel them together to win titles and get to the finals. You've got to look at a guy like that because he is no nonsense. He makes you play defense, but he also understands you got to let your stars shine, man. You got to let those stars shine. Other than that, if you can get Mike Malone back, he might be on the market. He was a guy who was with Monty's staff, another really good hire.
Do you make a change at just head coach, or do you reset the dial completely? If you do that, if you clean house, therein lies another.
Yeah.
Hey,
I'm on the fence on Dow.
I don't know. I mean, if you reset the dial, we're talking about now. There's going to be another interim period where there's a transition phase. You're probably going to change philosophy offensively and defensively. Mm-hmm. Does that fit with they've been going this one direction now, trying to get the offense and defense together with Cousins and Davis. Now you're resetting again. I don't know. I don't know.
But those 2 guys, with AD and Boogie,
Mid-City.
I don't think it would be that huge of a reset. I mean, what are you really resetting?
You're clearly looking at number one, the biggest thing is if you do make a wholesale change like that, you're looking at a guy that's going to come in and completely try to revamp some of these guys. Like, you're going to lose a lot of these guys that are on the bench that aren't playing, and then you're trying to figure out how to put a piece here, a piece there, and then try to makeshift an offense to where it all works together with Drew Holiday, Anthony Davis, and Marcus Cousins.
This isn't football. Basketball and baseball both. You make changes to the top, and it's more of a philosophy, I think, than a scheme.
All right, let's get some new thoughts on this, since we've probably hashed this out pretty well. Let's go to Bob in Mid-City. Bob, what are your thoughts on this issue, and what's on your mind today?
My NBA is always on my mind, Jeff.
Nice.
12 months a year, but thanks for taking my call. The ownership of the team and the management of the team is more or just as much of a concern to me as all of the points that all of your guests and Clyde especially and all of y'all bringing up. This is a basketball team that's run by a football executives. And right now, in the football season, the players, the powers that be in the Saints franchise are getting ready to figure out a lot of important things for the 2018 season of the Saints. And it's my contention, and I'm not disappointed that Tom Benson bought the team. The facility is great. The modernization is great. But it's not my contention. It is my contention that those football people, as well-meaning as they are not capable of making a sound decision if a general manager or coaching change is desired.
Thanks, Bob.
They are good people, but they don't know what they're doing. Today's NBA game, the next grade coaches and the next grade general managers are names and young individuals. We don't even know their names yet.
Well, Bob, real quick, what's the answer? I mean, you're asking for them to sell the team?
No good.
I just don't know what the answer is there. I don't think they're going to sell this team. And you're talking about trying to change out general managers and front office people. Is that the answer?
Well, no, I'm not saying that. But there are some in the fan base and some that I'm hearing right on this show that have that thought in their head. And I'm not into changing them. They weren't my first choice, especially Alvin. But he's doing a good job, 3 years, doing a good job. And he hasn't lost the players in the locker room. My point is that I don't think the ownership has the wherewithal to really, really think and sit down and look at a long-term thing to figure out, okay, we're gonna beat the bushes and we're gonna find young guys like the Celtics did, and like Miami has a great young coach who's experienced now, and the Spurs keep doing.
All right, Bob. Thanks for the call. You make some great points, and I think he's spot on in that it is. I've said this before on the show. The blessing and the curse of ownership by Tom Benson was, hey, he bought the team, he kept the team here. It's not moving to another market, but there is a learning process and a learning curve for all the executives out there. But all of a sudden, an NBA team is plopped in your lap. You got to figure out how to compete in this totally different business model than the NFL.
I don't know that I agree with that, and here's why. Tom Benson bought the Saints in 1985, and in 3 years, Jim Mora had them going somewhere where they had never been before. That's a load of baloney. As long as you leave it to people who know what they're doing, Tom Benson could own a field hockey team. If he hired the right person, they'd win. I don't think it matters whether Tom Benson knows basketball or not.
But I think that's what he's saying is that is one thing to say that you could leave it to people and hire people who, if Mickey Loomis is overseeing the Pels and the Saints, where do you think his? And I mean, again,
I think Mickey Loomis doesn't have. He's the business side of things. I don't think he's interfering really with what Del Demps wants to do. It's the same thing, and it's covering the voodoo. When the voodoo were going on, and Mickey Loomis was the general manager, everything was going on underneath the realm of Mike New, and the coach. Everything was going on, and basically Mickey was hands off unless he had to be. And that's how Mickey Loomis rolled. That's how.
I agree. I agree with that. Hold that thought. Let's take a break, our final break, before we wrap up hour 2, and we'll continue on this conversation because I think we got it going in the right direction. Sports 1280, NOLA.com, the iHeartRadio app. We are Duncan Holder. Stay with us. No, I agree with that. I just wonder if, like, Mickey doesn't
Mickey's not
cash in
messing
your
with
pocket.
anything.
1,000 bucks is up for grabs every hour.
Right, but that's what he's smart enough to know that he doesn't know.
But the difference was when Vincent bought the Saints,
Americans are
they still
always
had all
on the
these
move.
executives on
They're
board
in the
with the
car,
Saints.
or
You
at
gotta
the
run a
office,
football
or working
organization.
around the house.
Now, they might have over
Americans
time
refuse to sit
phased
still.
some of them
I don't know,
out.
So
they
how
heard
do you
from
connect
John
with all
Meek,
those
I'm
moving
sorry.
targets?
Wow, the Pelicans,
Easy, with
they
radio.
phased almost everybody
Radio
out.
reaches 93% of
Like, what's
Americans
his name? Who was
every
the president?
week, more than Google, Facebook, and
trying to
even
think of his name.
television.
Hugh Weber.
Because,
Yeah,
hey,
Hugh Weber.
it's time to sit and watch TV.
He's
I
a
know,
good
guy.
With all
Jeff
those
Lurie
constantly
did it.
moving adults,
I
teens,
mean,
and millennials.
there-
Get to
there are
iHeartMedia.com
several,
and put AM/FM
and I
radio
can't think
to
of them
work
off
for
the
your
top of my head.
company.
The guy who owned the Red Wings owned, didn't he own the Pistons too?
Serving the freshest
No NFL
Come
team
get
is
oysters
on
raw
board.
on the hash
I think
shell,
Kroenke
fried
had
cold and hot
NHL
appetizers.
teams.
Yeah, he has the Avalanche, and now
he's got.
Yeah,
I mean,
shrimp and grits.
But he's
With
the only
room
one.
for dessert. Down in
It's
our beautifully
totally unique.
renovated dining room.
And they're in the
on
same
patio,
building.
or
Same
belly
building.
up to the bar to
same.
watch the home team
Yeah.
play.
which
Oyster
isn't
Bar
strange. I mean,
Discount,
obviously
now
we
open
talk
the
about
French Court, 7 days a week
the
at 5:12 p.m.
wash
I'm Chris Walton. I'm a truck driver
guy who
from
owns
Missouri.
the
For 13 hours a night, I
Wizards
sit in my
and the
truck and I
Caps.
drive. Out of
I mean,
boredom,
they're all,
I'll
I think,
stop
in the
and
same
eat.
building.
If I'm not
Right.
doing fast
Mickey's
food, I
strength
guarantee
is
there's a bag of
business.
chips open on my
And
dashboard. That
for
was
what
all until Andrew
his strength
400. I
is, I
started
think
out
it
4
suits
months
the
ago,
way that they
and
run
since taking Andrew 400, I've dropped
this whole
45
thing.
pounds. I'm
Right,
sleeping
I just
better.
wonder
There's
if,
no
like,
craving. I
Football
actually
Now-
don't think
business,
about food.
basketball
My knee
business,
pain went away.
basketball
I've had
numbers,
some
football
lower back
numbers.
issues, and
I'm not
I've
saying that
noticed
he,
that went away.
as a
and
businessman,
I
he
can
doesn't
only
know
contribute that to Andrew
how to
400.
make all
One
that
thing that
coalesce.
Andrew
But
400
the
said on the
question is,
radio
though,
ad
in
is that
terms
it
of
attacks
how
belly fat.
important
Well,
it
let me
is
tell you,
and
it
how it
did. The
impacts a
second month
team
is
is
where I
different
saw
in the NBA
a
than how it does
drastic
in the
change.
I think where it
in my
impacts
stomach.
is
I've lost 6
when
inches. This
if he's
product
got the
really
right
does
person
work.
in Dell
So
Demps.
guys, if you'd like to experience
And
similar
whether
results,
I
then
don't
get
necessarily
Andro
think- I
400,
think his business
the safe,
acumen is
natural,
fine
and inexpensive
for
way to
both.
boost your
The
testosterone.
problem is
Go
if
to
he doesn't know basketball enough,
andro400.com
whether
or
he has
call
the right general manager
888-400-0435.
this team, and I don't even know that I know the answer to that question.
Do you know
'Cause I'm
someone
very
who
on
is
the
struggling
fence
with
with Dell Demps.
addiction? Do you need
And I think
help
that's fair. I
educating
think
your
that's a fair
kids
thing.
about the
And I think
dangers of
it-
drug
But
use?
when you make a
Narconon
change
has been
like that, at
educating
that
parents
position,
and kids
it's a lot
on the
easier to
dangers of
change your
drug
coach
abuse
than it is to
and
change your
rehabilitating
general
those struggling with drug addiction for over
and then how
50
willing you are to
years.
at least
If you or someone
be
you
able
know is
to
struggling with
really,
drug
really
addiction,
go
call us
full
today
on
for
into
free
it.
information
Just
and referrals.
I only need
Call
like 2 minutes to
877-959-0098. Again,
Oh, yeah,
call
you're-
There's like one main thing.
Let's do that real quick.
for free
Let's knock that
assessment
out.
and referrals.
And we'll come back.
Got
wrap
issues
up.
with youth or high school sports?
10 seconds.
Can help.
All right, bud.
PCA, a national nonprofit, offers more than 1,000 free online
So when's
resources
the
for youth
convention?
and high school sports
Starts
coaches,
tomorrow.
parents,
I'm not
students,
going
and
till
administrators.
Thursday.
Baton Rouge?
Visit PCADevZone.org.
This is Dunc and Holder on Sports 1280, New Orleans.
Welcome back. Jeff Duncan, Clad Bernan, Jim Derry. Our final segment before we hand it off here at Sports 1280. And JD, I know you've got some business you want to discuss. The LHSAA annual convention starts tomorrow in Baton Rouge, and there's some, I guess, pressing issues on the agenda.
Yeah, I'll be in Baton Rouge on Thursday and Friday. It starts tomorrow. Tomorrow's more just kind of executive committee formality stuff that doesn't make a lot of news. But Friday's the big day, is when they vote on stuff. And the big issue is the same issue it is every year, and it'll have the same result as it always has. They will be introducing a proposal. The biggest thing that I see on the agenda, and I haven't gone through the entire list, but I've gone through about 2/3 of it, is they will try to. I'm trying to see who is presenting this real quick, because I know we don't have a lot of time. Mike Boyer of Turling's Catholic, who knows this whole thing better than anybody. The principal of Turling's Catholic will introduce that they try to nix the split in baseball and basketball. They're not not even pretending to try to stop it in football because it's not going to happen. This won't pass either. They passed a rule last year. The geniuses who have been trying to just punch the select schools in the gut for the last 4 years changed the rules by just a slim margin, that now everything has to be passed by a 2/3 vote. So this won't pass because they won't get 2/3 of the member schools to end the split. The ridiculous farce of a playoff system that we have in high school sports here in the state, where let's just give them trophies, like especially in girls basketball, like John Curtis. I don't even know why John Curtis is playing girls basketball right now, because they literally could take their JV team and go win
steamrolling people
the Division I girls
well, it's
basketball.
a joke. Louisiana State high school
It's an
athletic
absolute farce.
system is a joke. It's a national embarrassment. Has been. We could do a whole program on this, and we probably will soon.
Should.
I'm on record about it. I can't believe that it's gotten to this point. But it's typical of Louisiana when you have poor leadership and you let too many chefs in the kitchen. Yeah.
Well, let me say real quick though, when you say poor leadership, it's the poor leadership of the principals, not of the Louisiana high school, because Eddie Bonine has actually done, in my opinion, an outstanding job as executive director, and as good a job as anyone could possibly do. And I was very skeptical at first 3 years ago when he was hired, bringing an outsider in. He came from Nevada, although he's been in a couple different places.
Sometimes I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, and he's come in and he has really done his best to try to bring these schools together. This core of, I don't even know what to call them. Their life's goal, they wake up every morning wondering how they can hose the private schools. This core group of people in central and northern Louisiana, they wake up every morning with this just inner rage in them that's going to end up have them stroking out one day.
Self-interest.
Let it out. Let it out, JD. Let it out.
Anyway, they had this thing, and Bonon did his best, and they tried to fire him last year.
I was going to say, that's how you can tell when someone's doing a good job.
They came within a whisker of getting him fired. They had to go in a closed session 3 or 4 times, and finally, I don't want to know if I want to say he won, because Mr. Bonine might have been better off to been ousted, and I told him this. But anyway, he's got an extension. The convention is going to be interesting. There are some other things. I'll probably have something up later this afternoon.
Football playing balls and
what's going on. They're not even trying to put lipstick on the pig of football. That's not changing anytime soon.
Well, you know what else is going on this week is the Senior Bowl over in Mobile. Yeah. It's kind of the first big NFL draft event, and we have Herbie Teope and Josh Katzenstein from our staff over there. We'll have them on the program later in the week as they've gotten their feet on the ground, had a chance to talk and chase the Saints parties involved, and identify some of the early prospects that are kind of shining over in Mobile.
Really quickly, Josh has actually put 2 things on Twitter that we retweeted from the Duncan Holder account. The Saints have already had talks with Utah defensive end Kylie Fitz.
1 minute.
And also tight end Dallas Goedert from South Dakota State.
And before we go, Dunk, thanks for having me on in place of Larry. I appreciate it, enjoyed it. And B, Clyde and I will be tonight, NOLA.com. Our first of 2 consecutive games of the week will be at Jesuit for Jesuit and John Curtis, and tomorrow night we'll be also broadcast St. Paul's and Slidell.
Awesome. And tomorrow I want to alert everybody, we're going to have a special recruiting show, 2 full hours
30
with our recruiting analysts, Jimmy Smith and Amos Morale. We're going to break down the Nifty 50, look at all the local prospects, where they might be going, the unsigned targets, and also look at the LSU and Tulane classes as they head into the big signing day here in a couple of weeks. So we want to thank Will Guillory, Brett Martell, Fletcher Mackel, and we want to thank everybody here involved. Duncan Holder. We'll be back again
well,
tomorrow.
Larry.
Thanks, bud.
It's important to buckle up your kids.
I know.
Sometimes car.
All right, gang.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
And if your child's in the wrong seat and you get into a crash.
I know.